False start. Hey guys, what is up? We're live and we're back. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist. The only thing that matters is film. Finally, welcome to 2023 or year 4 on the COVID calendar, however you want to reckon it. And yeah, I think that was like our longest hiatus. Have we ever had a longer hiatus? Because it was like maybe the first or second week in November was our last show. We missed all of December. And I mean, we're here at pretty much the end of the month. So that was probably our longest time off, which was not intentional, but it happened. So whatever.
Yeah, man, I swear, like we were cursed or something for a minute there. It's just like without fail, something would happen to one of us, you know?
The whole year was not very good. I mean, we did not get much done in 2022. So we're hoping this will be a more productive year. We definitely want to get more shows out there. We've had plenty of stuff that we wanted to do, but as far as this one goes, so this is Oldboy. It probably wasn't anything we were going to do now. We were speaking of cursed, like the last one we were planned was a Korean film. It was The Yellow Sea, and we might still do it. And I wound up watching that movie almost 3 full times in preparation for it, because not only because I had to watch it online, but one because it's long and sort of complicated, but no matter where I found it online, it was always, I guess, the same version, because what would happen was once you got a little past the 40-minute mark, the subtitles were no longer in sync with what was going on. And they were really out of sync. Like sometimes they were like a whole minute ahead. And then sometimes it was like they were a minute behind. So once I got there, it became a very confusing watch because it was hard to tell who was saying what and things like that. And I wound up watching the movie, which is almost 2.5 hours long. It's like 2 hours, 20-some minutes. I watched it almost 3 full times, and we never actually managed to get the show done. And then when we knew we were finally going to do something here, I was just like, I can't watch that movie again. I can't do it. So something else. And so
it's a pretty complicated movie. I mean, it's a movie with a lot of characters in it. So I think you probably do need to see the proper subtitles. I think that would definitely help out.
I just couldn't believe that. Because, I mean, for 40 minutes, it's completely normal.
Yeah.
And then there's a fairly long scene, right around at the 40 minute. There's a fairly long scene with no dialogue. And then suddenly all these captions start popping up when nobody's talking, because it's what's coming later. And then it just snowballs from there. It gets worse and worse and harder to get. So might as well stay in Korea. And, we did do the first, this is the middle and obviously most well-known of Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy, Oldboy.
Yeah.
We did do the first one. So I guess in a way it's fitting because we always meant to do the whole thing. So we're doing them in order, I guess. Not that you need to see them or tackle them in order of release because it's a thematic trilogy. It's not narratively linked or anything, but this is the middle one coming out in 2003. The other one was 2002. And I think Lady Vengeance is 2005. So we hope to do Lady Vengeance eventually too, and do the whole.
Yeah, we would have done this.
Obviously, very spread out.
We would have done this trilogy eventually anyway, so it's might as well. We were just trying to get something to get an episode done because it's such problems. So
get ourselves going. And I mean, it's funny. On one hand, we thought this is an easy watch, and on the other hand, it's not an easy watch because just so much of it is so gut wrenching. But I don't know. I was glad to see it again because it's been a while. Quite a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years at least, since I watched. Probably more now that I think about it. Maybe like 6 or 7 now that I think about it, because it's I was shocked by how much of it I'd sort of forgotten things about it. I mean, you always remember the big bullet points, and I mean, we don't always say this, although it's understood and we're the watchers show that we do full spoilers. I mean, full spoilers for a movie that most people know anyway, but I don't know who's watching, so who knows. But obviously, we can do full spoilers of a movie that's known for having some twists and turns in it, so you are warned there. That's how we do these things. And it harkens back to, I've talked about this before. I grew up, I liked movies, watched movies with Ryan and my friends and things like that. We go rent movies in the 90s, and I had favorite movies and a lot of things like that. But still, I don't think I was as big a movie fan as a lot of people were. And it really changed for me. My first year of university, I had a roommate who was really into movies, and that helped. And then I actually met somebody else there who we were friends with, and he was really into like weird stuff. He's a big David Lynch fan. That's how I watched like Twin Peaks and the David Lynch movies. And he also had a real taste for just bizarre strange, movies, which includes foreign movies and independent movies and things like that. And we were blessed by having Video Difference, which was just a wonderful video rental video store that lasted all the way up to 2016. And you never appreciate something till it's gone. I never took full advantage of it. It was a pricey place, but it was worth it. 3 floors of movies, just anything you were looking for, they had it. If it wasn't up on the main thing in Blu-ray, they probably had it down in the basement, at least on DVD in the archives. It was a hell of a place. But so that like early to mid 2000s was really sort of my change, my, I don't know, becoming a cinephile or whatever you want to call it, because this is where I made the jump from the movies that were popular and everybody knew to getting into the less known movies. And I think this was my first Korean film. I think this was probably a lot of people's first Korean film. And I just remember there was a lot of buzz. There's a lot of buzz around this movie. I can just remember these are the years when I still lived in residence and people talk about it. There's certain movies that I saw and I remember there being buzz about them beforehand. And actually, having seen this movie just again recently, the ending, because of the use of its music and everything like that, reminds me a lot of another one of the movies of that era that, again, I would hear about and discover while I was there, which was Requiem for a Dream. So that was another one. What else was there? Most of these were movies that had come out just around, this is early 2000s. Not saying that there wasn't stuff from earlier. Obviously there was, but there was a lot of early 2000s stuff that, again, was not necessarily big mainstream movies, but on places like university campuses and things like that, I guess, the internet was around, but it wasn't quite what it is now. And it was movies like that and Memento. Memento was a 2000 release also, I think. That was a big deal. I remember, somebody in our dorm being like, this movie's crazy. It goes backwards. And oh, man, you got to see it. And I remember that I put that director on my radar. Which director's that? Memento. Well, that's Nolan. That's Christopher Nolan, right? So this is the earlier Christopher Nolan, right? So that's why we watched his movie from a couple years before that, Pi, which I hate with all my heart and I'll probably never watch again. But I remember watching that. Yeah, I think that's Christopher Nolan, isn't it? Pi.
That was
Pi and
no, that's sure. Aronofsky.
Oh, right, that one's Aronofsky, but Nolan is Memento. For some reason, I'm linking them like they're the same director, but they're not. I guess it's just because, like I said, I watched them both, I think, within a span of maybe a week or so. My first year at university, I think, is maybe why. I'm trying to think. And another one, watching, again, a couple years in, another 2000 release, and one of my favorite movies of all time that stuck with me, another Asian movie, Battle Royale. So I just remember all these movies washed over me like within a very short amount of time and sort of transformed me from more of a casual fan into that. And Oldboy was part of that. People were like, oh, I gotta see this movie. It's crazy. Because, I mean, it's true. I mean, obviously, movies have been around, but they weren't on my radar. So to like see a movie that goes as far as this movie goes and gets into some of the stuff that it gets into was pretty nuts. Plus, it's always known for a really memorable action scene, which isn't as long as I remember. Isn't it funny? Like, I hadn't seen the movie in a while. I was kind of surprised by how quickly the scene went by, because I guess over time your memory changes. Like I was like, I remember it being longer and more elaborate, but I think that's probably because it was an influential scene, and I'm getting it mixed up with like probably movies that took some influence from it and did their own thing in it later. And maybe, I'm getting that all confused in my mind. I mean, it's still very satisfying, but I remember just watching it yesterday and thinking, wow, that's a lot shorter than I thought.
I thought the exact same thing when I saw that scene, because that's like I guess normies or whatever. That's the scene that they would gravitate towards, because it's just action packed, and it's a great scene. But I thought it was longer as well.
It's a great scene, and it was. There might have been stuff that predates it in that style, but it's an interesting. It's really hard for me to explain or describe because we're so used to a certain kind of violence in movies, a highly sort of stylized, non-realistic violence, and then there are movies that are fairly realistic. But they're realistic to the point where it's almost kind of boring because it's so much like real life. It's like it's a fight that's real, but it's actually kind of boring to watch for how real it is. This kind of strikes a chord between the two, I think, in that it's definitely stylized, and it's definitely, I mean, it's one guy against a whole ton of guys. Like, how realistic is that he can win? But they frame it in such a way that it feels realistic, and in a different way than, say, like watching a Jet Li movie where he's just bouncing around, kicking everybody. In this. God. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. But in this, like, we get the scene, we get the shot from outside, through the wall. It's a narrow hallway, so that's one thing. It helps negate their advantage of numbers because there's not much room to move around. Plus, he does have a weapon. He has the hammer. I mean, he doesn't have it for the whole fight. And I mean, it's more realistic in that, like, all you have to do is hit somebody pretty much anywhere with a hammer, and they're probably highly disabled or at least out, partially out of the fight. And I think that's one of the things that made it different too, is because like as you get further, we're so used to like this slick action going through, knocking guys down, stuff like this. He's taking hits too. And by the end, like he's exhausted, they're exhausted. There's no more pop to their punches. It's realistic from that. That like they're actually tired and they're hurt. And I'll bring that up again later when we get to it. But yeah, I guess that's really what stands out. And of course, the movie has a fairly interesting, I guess, twist you want to call it, that people remark on too. So yeah, so this was a big sort of gateway movie for me because it was just during that time where I was starting to absorb foreign movies and independent movies and movies that were not talked about or popular or even necessarily given theatrical releases around here and things like that. So this was part of that wave, and of course it had a big effect on me. And I'm fairly certain it was the first Korean movie I saw. So put Park Chan-wook on my radar. Yeah. Nowadays he's pretty damn well known, I'd say.
This is still probably his most well-known film, I would say. When you say his name, I think people think of Oldboy. And I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that, but as being his best film. But yeah, this has definitely introduced me to Korean cinema as well, because I mean, we're talking it's 20 years old now. So, back then movies were harder to come by. You couldn't just, get on the internet and find a movie like you can now. And I know there was a lot of buzz about this movie at the time, and I probably didn't see it till maybe a year or two after it came out, just because it wasn't available. And it really blew me away.
I mean,
really put him on my radar as well.
I think I saw it in late 2003. I think I saw it the same year it came out, but probably towards the end of it. I know I was trying to think, so maybe I wasn't still living on campus. I saw it on campus, but maybe I wasn't living on campus because I lived on campus 01, 02, 02, 03, and that doesn't line up. So maybe I saw it in my third year when I didn't live on campus, but in someone else's dorm room, because I seem to associate it with seeing it on campus, like some of those other movies I mentioned. But as we said, we had a real gold mine of a great video store in the neighborhood, so you could get something like this. They had the foreign stuff that even back then.
I guess maybe you had some Wes Anderson movies mixed in with that, with your list there.
Which list?
With your just the movies you were talking about watching at university.
Oh,
like Royal Tenenbaums was probably around that time.
It was, but I had more of a delayed thing to that. The one that really made me, it was like I think I'd seen Royal Tenenbaums. I think I was like you. I remember you said you didn't like Royal Tenenbaums the very first time you saw it way back then. And then you came back. I didn't dislike it like you did, but I probably did not, super appreciate it the way I would come to. The big one for me remains my favorite was in 2004, just not really based on anything except, I guess, a love of Bill Murray. I saw The Life Aquatic in theaters in 2004, and and after that, hell yeah, I was really into Wes Anderson.
Royal Tenenbaums is such a quirky movie that may have what threw me off. It's like I like all these actors, and it just didn't mesh for me at first. But as you get into the world of Wes Anderson, I love that movie every time, more every time I watch it. So
yeah, I mean, it was back before he had totally formed his identity and you knew what to expect. But once you'd seen a couple of them, you kind of knew what you were in for. I mean, we'll talk later. You finally, I assume, watched The French Dispatch.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get around to that? Yeah, so we can talk about that a bit later too. But yeah, that, like I said, that early to mid 2000s was the big awakening for me with cinema and movies, and especially with foreign movies and independent movies. And
at the time, we didn't realize how good we had it. It's like if you go a few years past that, it's just a shit for years. Like that was a pretty good time for movies, the early 2000s.
2001 is my favorite year in film. I've mentioned this before. I mean, there's different ways to decide what your favorite is, whether it's just quality all the way through or if it's top heavy. For me, it's because it's top heavy. Like my top 10 of 2001 like blows away like my top 10 from almost any other year. I think 86 would probably be the next one after that. But I mean, I've mentioned this before on the show, but it's been a while, so I don't feel like I'm being repetitive. Like 2001 has like Spirited Away, which is the big one for me, Spirited Away, but the Royal Tannenbaums, Donnie Darko, Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah. There's more than that I'm leaving off, but just huge movies that to this day I absolutely adore.
I'm gonna do a list of movies from that year because I need to go back through. You know what may be interesting to do sometime is if we did like decades and talked about the best year out of that decade. Just talk about a few of the films that came out, something like that.
Oh yeah, I love that. It's kind of interesting. So did you hear not too long ago, Quentin Tarantino had said something like the 2010s were like among the worst decades for movies. And then he said, along with the 80s and 50s. And I'm thinking, wasn't that convenient that your movies were the 90s and 2000s, Quentin? So, you made movies in the good times. But, I thought that was kind of interesting.
The 80s?
I was like, that's
who would ever... You can't say the 80s is the worst decade,
one
of the worst decades for film. No, I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, he did, yeah. I know. Well, it's also just such it's just such absolutism, like saying it like it's a fact, right, and not like an opinion. Same reason why I get annoyed with certain things like Martin Scorsese says, because he says them like it's just like the law, like this is how it is. It's like, fuck you, people have different likes and things like that. But yeah, that's what because it was weird because at first it's just like, oh, Quentin Tarantino's bagging on movies of the day, saying how crappy the 2010 were. Okay, I guess I can get behind that. But he's like, along with the 80s and 50s, which were also wastelands. You're like, wow, okay, but not the 90s and 2000s because that was your era, man. And that's when everything was great. And I mean, I love the 90s and 2000s also. So, but still, I just think that was an odd thing for him to say.
Did he not have a movie come out in the 2010s?
Oh yeah, he had a couple, but I'm just saying, still his heyday is 90s and 2000s.
Right.
He certainly did. I mean, obviously, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and what's it called? The Hateful Eight. They're both 2000s.
Hateful Eight.
They're fine. They're fine.
Maybe even
saw them both in theater. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what year. I think that was 2007, wasn't it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
I think it was. I don't think
he was taking a break, I guess, during that period of time. So that's why.
Well, he was involved in a lot of stuff because there was also that era in the late 2000s, early 2010s where it was like Quentin Tarantino presents, where it's like I don't even know what that means. Like he didn't direct it, he might have possibly produced it. I don't know, but he's endorsing it anyway. They had a few of those.
He produced those damn Hostel movies.
Yeah.
And had his name all over that. But he did do some good stuff. He brought some good martial arts movies and some good foreign movies that we may not have seen otherwise.
As I said, like, I mean, I criticize him for a lot of things, but I can praise him for a lot of things too. It's the thing. Like, I'm never going to agree with everything he thinks or says or anything like that. But yeah, I just thought it was an odd comment he said about just the decades, and I was like, wow, the 50s and the 80s, like, yeah, a lot of people think like some of the best movies are from the 80s. That might be their favorite film decade. And I mean, obviously, that's people our age and a little older that have some nostalgia goggles on, but that doesn't detract the fact that there's also some just amazing movies from that. I mean, every decade has its amazing movies, really.
Well, just the sheer number.
The decade being a wasteland.
Just the sheer number of movies in the 80s. I mean, I'm always finding movies from the 80s that I haven't even heard of. I'm like, wow, I didn't know this existed, and that's considering, as fans like we are, it's kind of odd.
Yeah, like the 50s is kind of a wasteland for me, but it's not necessarily quality because like when I think about it, I think I've seen less movies from the 50s than I have from the 30s or 40s. It's kind of weird. You would think, the further go back, it would be the least, but I think I've seen more movies from the 30s and 40s than the 50s. It's
I'm not real familiar with that decade. And stuff we're seeing.
I mean, obviously, the 50s, like anything else, had some really big movies. It was the time of James Dean, for instance, his movies.
Okay.
In the 50s. like was it East of Eden? That's one of them. Rebel Without a Cause.
And that
Obviously,
was
I think that
about it.
maybe one of the reasons why I don't think about the 50s much is the 50s was really dominated by westerns, right? Which has never been a genre I've
Oh,
been that much of a fan of. Although I'm dying for us to do another western on the show. There's one in particular I really want to watch that I want to find somewhere first. But I mean, there's a couple westerns I think are worth doing on the show. We did way back. We did the Australian western Proposition, but I've never given up on doing another western or two eventually. But I think that's one of the reasons why like the 50s doesn't click for me is because it was kind of dominated by the western. Like that was definitely the most popular genre, really. Well, it was kind of that, and like as far as Hollywood movies go, anyway, it was the western, and it was like the big sort of costume epic. Those were also like a big deal in the 50s, even into the early 60s. Like Cleopatra was 63, right? That might have been just before that whole genre collapsed in on itself. You had a 4-hour movie with Elizabeth Taylor and was it Rex Harrison? And I don't know.
Was it?
And it's like we can't keep making these.
Didn't they make a lot of those like beach movies too? Like what do you call it?
Yeah, those were kind of the more pop,
Frankie Avalon and whoever his wife was.
Annette Funicelli or whatever her name is. Annette, she was the Musketeer.
I think they both were.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Those were sort of like the easy popcorn movies of the 50s for sure. Along with the sci-fi of that, that's when sci-fi sort of emerged, was the 50s, the B movie sci-fi. So I mean, yeah, the 50s has plenty of stuff going for it. I do have to see more from it, but yeah, the early 2000s was just, as I said, maybe it wasn't that different from other things, but just because things were more accessible, like you said, things were becoming more accessible because of the internet and things like that, and things getting DVD releases. That's a big deal. I think is DVD releases.
Oh yeah.
And of course, just the age that I was, I was in my, I was like 19, 20, 21, so I was at that part of my life where it's like, I'm ready to be exposed to new things and new experiences.
Yeah.
And, movies were a part of it. So, yeah. So this movie definitely made a big impression on me. And then, I saw it a few times over the years, but it's been quite a while since I saw it again, as I said. So I've forgotten some things. Like, for instance, there is some bizarre surrealism, like in the movie. Like early on, there's that whole thing about the ants. Like I'd forgotten about that. And there's a part like where there's a shot where like I don't know if it's imagined or what, but I remember, or it's a flashback. It shows her, Mido, sitting on like a subway, but there's like a really close up like of an ant kind of like blocking the camera with her in the background. It's really weird, almost like it's a giant ant or something. It's really weird. It's interesting. Oh, Amelie is another one from 2001, which I saw in the theater in like the fall of 2001 when I'd first arrived in Halifax or university. So yeah, another big, huge game changer. So we did Amelie on here. That popped into my head because honestly, I think that's what I thought of when I saw that subway scene, because it was like weird, bizarre surrealism with a quirky looking girl. Like suddenly it's like, oh, Amelie. I think that popped into my head when I watched it, which is why I suddenly remembered the movie. But yeah, another of my favorite movies, a 2001 release.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just that era. It's not. I'm not trying to say like better movies, but maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's a little bit of a lag. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I see my connection's not very good tonight. I'm really worried about hosting my own stuff because like I had some stuff to do. The last thing I did, and the only thing I've done since I got back here after Christmas, I actually deleted because it looked so bad. I did just a solo live commentary to do something, and it was just the quality was such garbage that I was like, I deleted it right off the channel. So that's unfortunate. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too upset about the connection because at least I got power. Because for a while we weren't sure we're going to get this one done yet again because I didn't have power for most of today and into the night. But when I came back from the library tonight, I was pleasantly surprised that the power had been restored. So
you can record and then post the video instead of going live. I mean, the quality may be better. I'm not sure.
Like I know.
Instead of going live, just do the the record. But
yeah, well, this was just a spur of the moment thing. It didn't really matter, so it's not a big deal. What was it? It was I can't remember what it was anymore. Oh, it was License to Kill, the James Bond movie. Because ages ago, I had done my favorite James Bond movie, the other Timothy Dalton. I'm the only person in the world. Actually, it's not true.
Moonraker!
On Twitter a year ago. No, The Living Daylights. Timothy Dalton only got 2. Living Daylights in 87 and License to Kill in 89. So I thought, oh, I'll bookend that. I'll finally do License to Kill since I haven't seen it in a while. I mean, I enjoy the movie, but I was like, oh, this looks so bad that I deleted it off my channel. So I don't know. Well, maybe I'll do License to Kill another time with guests or something.
Who was in Moonraker then, if it wasn't Timothy Dalton?
Oh, that's a Roger Moore.
Oh, Roger Moore. Okay. I don't know why I was thinking that was Dalton.
Because that's 79. 79. Moore definitely did the weird, like that. Well, that's the thing about Dalton. Dalton didn't do any. He only did 2, and they were both serious. Like Moore basically covered the bases for the goofy ones. Not that he didn't do good ones too, but I mean, a lot of people think Moonraker's kind of the height of it too. So most of the goofy ones were Moore. Like Man with the Golden Gun. I love that movie, but it's one of his goofier ones. Although it has one of the best car stunts you'll ever see. It's ruined by a horrible slide whistle effect, but the stunt is just bonkers. You know, they didn't have CGI back then. Like that was a real thing. It's a car driving to get over like a river, going off like this weird twisted ramp, and the car like literally does like a weird spiral and then lands. It's incredible. It's incredible. Some wonderful stunts in the Bond movies. Maybe the best stunt ever was in, speaking of Moore, obviously it's not Moore who did it. It was an American ski jumper who did it. Was people remember the opening of The Spy Who Loved Me? It ends with him literally skiing off a cliff and then like parachuting down. Like again, that's a real person just doing it. That might be the best stunt that's ever been filmed. And yeah,
I remember that stunt.
That's another one of the good Moore ones.
I wish I liked James Bond
with the big with the big Union Jack parachute. Yeah. Well, I mentioned this before. It's kind of funny. Like for years, I didn't understand really that I was a James Bond fan until I ran up against people who really weren't. Because remember, years ago, we were just throwing stuff together for the Sausage Factory. So I suggested James Bond because I was like, it's a long series. There's tons of movies. You know, you don't have to have seen everything. You know, of the group of us, we'll have seen most of them, I'm sure. And Pezel was like, oh yeah, that's a good one. So when we did it, like, most of you had very little to say, and I wound up talking to you the whole thing. And I was like, I guess I am a James Bond fan because these guys can't even keep the movies straight. Like, I don't know, like my brain is just locked in. Like I can name every Bond film in order easily, and I can tell them, and even the ones I don't like or know or have seen, I can still tell them apart. Like I don't mix James Bond films up. I know what's what. I realize that's not most people's experience. Most people are like, yeah, I've seen probably 7 or 8 of them, but I don't know what is what unless, you know, it's the Daniel Craig ones.
Yeah.
But
I think the problem is I used to watch a lot of those on like marathons. You know, they would do like marathons on cable. And that's probably why.
Oh yeah, they were on TBS. That's what got me into them. I used to tape them because back when Tomorrow Never Dies was getting its release in '97. TBS would do like 17 Days of Bond, and I remember I taped a bunch of them, and that's how I saw a lot of them for the first time, or at least for the first time all the way through. And I mean, I was super, and this ties into what's going on right now because the game GoldenEye came out and that took over my life, and the game GoldenEye has been released on Switch Online, and oh my god, that's all I'm going to do tomorrow is to play a GoldenEye, which I haven't played in so long because I never owned a 64. I always played Ryan's or somebody else's. So like I have not played that game in ages. So I am super pumped.
What is that on the Switch?
Is that it's on. Well, it's on the online thing. It's a membership thing you pay for, but the online gives you access to older games. It started very slow. First, it was just Nintendo, but it's got the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, which is kind of weird, and the N64 on there. And they, you know, over time they release more games. There weren't too many 64 games on until recently, but today or tomorrow or whatever, I guess technically the 27th, but I think it's already available in most regions. GoldenEye's out, so I'm dying to play that.
Is that multiplayer?
Yeah, you can do online apparently.
Could we play?
David, I think so. If you have
that would be awesome.
A Switch profile. Yeah, we'll look into that because we'll exchange our information on our Switch profiles. And, be friends.
Cool,
We
cool.
need to be Switch friends. Because I've gotten to do very little of that. I mean, Ryan and I like once or twice got to play some of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, but that's like the only time I've ever
If
gotten to
it's
do any online play on the Switch.
Is it 4-player, you think?
I mean,
Or
I would think so because I mean the original game was 4-player.
well, it could be unlimited because, then it was, the local multiplayer, so it was all on the
Split
screen.
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they can go over 4 because they're not it's still just the same game. Like they haven't gone in and changed anything. So I think 4 is still the limit, but yeah. We'll find out for sure. So I'm
Oh,
super
yeah.
looking forward to that. So that ties. So 97 was the year of Bond for me, not just because of the movie, but also, yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies came out in 97. That was an okay movie. That was the first Bond I saw in theaters. And actually, until this latest one, that was uninterrupted. I feel bad. I wanted to see No Time to Die in theaters, but again, because of the COVID situation, everything that was weird was going on, I didn't get to see it. So that broke my streak. I saw every Bond in theater from 97 on until that, which still bothers me. But anyway, sidestepping all that, we'll get to the actual movie in question.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to think about where to start. I mean, this is part of the Vengeance trilogy, so obviously the theme is revenge and vengeance, and it's pretty damn bleak. I mean, it's an interesting exploration of it. I mean, it doesn't really bring anything new, but it does hammer home some of the things you already suspect about vengeance, which is like how hollow it can be. You think if you get revenge on somebody, you're going to feel better, it's going to fix things, and it seems like the message that gets hammered home a lot of times in most of these movies is like it's not going to help anything. In fact, it might make everything worse. But it's a very interesting world that our characters inhabit here. I assume it's in Seoul. This idea that there's like an off the books like a legal prison where you can pay to have like people kept there, and it's kind of like a hotel. I always thought that was a really interesting concept. Of course, this is based very loosely on the manga of the same name, but I think they change an awful lot of stuff. But that is the same, I think, in the manga is that there's in the city there's this weird like hotel prison thing where you can pay to hold people. So we've got our main character there. Come on, I know their names. I don't need to look it up. I know his name. I don't want to look it up. Oh, Odesu. It starts in 1988, and he's like, I don't know, some annoying salaryman, kind of a bit of a drunk, and it's his daughter's birthday, and anyway, and he gets abducted out of nowhere and wakes up there, and I always wonder. There's quite a few movies where people get abducted where they make a point of not actually showing the abduction, which I do think
Mhm.
is good in a way. What's funny, I don't want to again derail myself and get off into something else, but like just 2 weeks ago, I watched because well, just before that, like before Christmas, I had at my library, uh I'd taken out a DVD, which was a set of Adam Egoyan's early films, and it's all like his early stuff, like that nobody's seen. It's from the '80s when he was super young, and I watched all 4 of them. So I was thinking about Adam Egoyan. He's the guy that did the Sweet Here. He's the guy that did the Sweet Hereafter and
Mhm.
Exotica, Canadian director. But anyway, these were his like early like super indie films from the '80s, and they were fun. I watched them. I didn't really like Calendar, which was the last one from about '93. I didn't really like the structure of Calendar, but I like the other ones. There was one called Next of Kin, which I thought was very good. One was called like Family Viewing, which I thought was very good. They were very similar. But anyway, so I was thinking about him, and then I saw like I think on Netflix or something like he'd done a movie a few years ago that had Ryan Reynolds in it that I hadn't seen. And it was called The Captive, which involves somebody getting kidnapped. And then dutifully after watching the movie, as far as I could tell, it was a brand new movie to me. I went to log it at Letterbox, and it popped up that I had logged the movie back in 2015. That's the first time in my life that this has happened. I can't remember ever logging a movie, thinking I'd seen it for the first time, and then finding out that I did watch it because I have zero memory of watching it in 2015 or any other time. Like it was all new to me. But anyway, my point is, what happens there is like Ryan Reynolds' daughter gets abducted, and it's kind of like this, like he leaves her for a second, looks away, and then boom, she's gone. We never actually see the abduction, and I do think that is kind of more powerful. Is that how it worked? In speaking of, it's been so long since we did, it's hard to remember. We did ages ago. We did damn that Danish movie, The Vanishing. That doesn't actually show the abduction, does it? We see a few times he does like we see him doing like practicing it in flashback, but we don't actually see her disappear, do we? We get it from the point of view of the boyfriend, right? Where it's kind of the same thing. Right. He's like talking to her and he's like, I'm going to go over here. And then he turns around, she's just gone. I do think that is an effective way of doing that. It was the same thing here. He's like out with his friend drinking, and he's called home telling his wife and kid that he's going to be back and blah, blah, blah. And then his friend is on the phone in the phone booth for a minute. And then he's like, I'll give the phone back to your father. And he's just gone. I do think that is powerful. You don't really need to see him get dragged away or anything like that.
I agree.
And
I mean, it's not always necessary.
It's a movie with narration. No, I mean, it helps add to like some mysteriousness to it. He's just gone. And then you see he wakes up in like a weird, bizarre hotel room thing. So the movie has narration. One of the things I forgot, speaking of, is the opening. I forgot that it opened a little further on when he's already out, right? Because it opens with him when he's first out and he meets the suicidal guy, and then he's just like, it's such an odd scene because at first you think, oh, this is a guy he's like taking revenge on or something. He's holding, the guy's like, he seems really scared. He's holding about the tie, the guy's holding the dog. But then when you finally come back to the present, you see like this guy was just gonna kill himself anyway. And he's not really interested. He's just so amazed to be finally free and see a human being. He's like touching his face and all this stuff.
Right.
But as far as like him actually killing himself, he doesn't even listen to him. He's like, anyway, I'm going to tell you my story, like why I'm here. And he just walks off. But it is a bizarre opening to the movie because usually when movies open like that, like somewhere in the middle or something like that, it's like, okay, now let's see how we got here and why it matters. We see what we got here and why it matters super fast. And we also find out that this moment's not really that important. Like this guy's nobody. And it's almost for comedic effect that once he's down and on the street, the guy goes and smashes on the car and goes through with it and kills himself in the background anyway. It's almost comedy, I guess. I mean, we talked back in when we did the other one, when we did Sympathy for Mrs. Vengeance, how there was a little bit of dark comedy in that. This one has a smidge too, but not much. And I think by the time you get to Lady Vengeance, there's none. I don't think there's a single light moment in Lady Vengeance. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I don't think so. But of the Vengeance trilogy, this is the one that doesn't have vengeance in the title. And it's probably the more complicated vengeance. I do like how it's like split vengeance in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, because it's a little confusing at first who's getting him vengeance and what for, because because it's kind of like a series of like mistakes happening. It's like, wait, who is Mr. Vengeance? Which one is seeking vengeance? Because by the end we have a couple characters that both have reasons to have vengeance on each other. This one, it's like one guy getting vengeance on another guy, and then the other guy trying to get vengeance on him, not knowing why he got vengeance on him. And I'm sick of saying the word vengeance. Right. It's lost all meaning. But the third one is kind of simple as far as that compared to the other two.
Yeah.
You have a woman, something happened to her, she's going to take vengeance on the people that did it to her. I don't think there's too many twists and turns in that movie. But then again, it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm probably forgetting a lot. So, yeah, we'll have to look into that to complete the trilogy. But so you do have narration by our main character in this, which is also different. I don't think it's in the other movies. And a lot of the narration and dialogue is odd. And I don't know if it's translation or what, or if it's just a deliberate choice. Because even at one point later when he comes out, like some people are like, "Why do you always talk like this?" Because I think it's because like he's kind of forgotten how to talk to people because he's been locked up for 15 years. So he talks in sort of an overtly dramatic way. There's also a few times where I wonder about the translation, because there's a part where when he's I'm jumping ahead here, but there's a part where when he's finally talking to his tormentor, not everything's been revealed yet, but he's like, okay, you found me, but you still want, but you don't know why. You want to know why. And he says, and the line that I got in my subtitles was like, the question that has bugged you for 15 years. And I'm thinking, bugged. Is that the right translation? Is that what he's saying? The question that bugged you? Wouldn't it be more like haunted you or tormented you? Bugged seems weak, So sometimes there's moments like that where I wonder about like how, something maybe is lost in translation or just something they just picked the wrong word. Because bugged does not feel like a strong enough word for that it bugged him. I think it did more than bugged him. He's locked up for 15 years and had no idea why. Yeah, I think it was more than it bugged him. So there's a few moments like that where I'm just like a little confused by the translation, and I don't know if it's a deliberate choice or it's just a mistake or what. But yeah, there's definitely some dramatic dialogue going on, but it doesn't feel out of place given the stakes. It's a very dramatic movie with a lot of important, serious stuff happening, and it's augmented by really great use of a lot of classical music. I think this is a really good soundtrack. Just the way that they use the music is really good. And I think that's another thing that makes me think of, again, I tie it up in my mind just because of the time of my life when I saw them both, but also because they're both dark and they both have a lot of use of that dramatic music, which again is Requiem for a Dream. Mm-hmm. They both sort of have that going for them, particularly the ending. Of course, Requiem for a Dream had its own theme, the da 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 thing going on there, but this was similar.
That's a tough watch for me. I don't know that I'll ever watch that one again.
Not as hard on me as it is on other people, although I totally get it. So this is, by the way,
so fucking bleak.
Min-sik. Oh yeah, I know. This is right up there with that though. And Choi Min-sik would be in I Saw the Devil, which also I've seen.
Oh yeah,
as far as Korean films go, that is a very good one. And he shows up again. Actually, what's interesting is he does. I have no memory of this, but he's in Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, not as the same character, a completely different character, obviously. But I don't remember that.
Yeah, he does reuse.
He's still acting. I mean,
his actors.
He's 60 now. So he would have been 40.
He's in.
So really, he was a bit younger. Probably he was a bit younger than the role, really. Because you have to think he was probably about 30. He was 40, but probably the character probably would have been later 40s, I think. If you do the math on that, him being locked up for 15 years, him having a daughter, blah blah blah. She's supposed to be about maybe 19, I think. I think his daughter's turning 4. It's 1988. His daughter's turning 4.
Oh, 19.
And then he gets out in 2003. Yeah. So she'd be about 19. So yeah, we might as well.
Oh. Yeah. Okay, so let's.
But it's a crazy performance. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So we've got he gets out, everything's good, and then he finally realizes what's going on, and he tries to seek vengeance against. God damn it! I just had his name, Woo Jin, for
Woo Jin
locking him up, and he doesn't know why that he was in prison for that long. But okay, so
right.
Spoilers, obviously, but Woo Jin's sister died, right? And he's the one that lets her go, or she slips or whatever and falls into off the dam. Why is he blaming that on him again? Because he's blaming the death of his sister.
Well, it all comes down that
Dae-soo.
So I guess it's understood, and you can take it for what's worth, whether it's reliable or not, that they were to get the game together. When she tried to commit suicide, he tried to stop her and was unable to. And she was just like, let me go.
Right.
And she said, I don't care. Let me go. It comes back to the first thing that he told him. The first clue he gave him was that Dae-soo talks too much. What comes down to, he saw them together was the thing. It was his last day at their school, and he was going to be transferred. Right. He was just wandering around, and he happened to catch them together committing incest. Right?
Yeah.
And then he told his friend, and then his friend would go on to tell people and would make all these rumors. And then later,
rumors. Okay.
The rumor grew. That she had gotten pregnant, and according, if you believe Lee Woo-jin, his thing was he didn't get her pregnant. And that she had a hysterical pregnancy, which is a thing that can happen. So that was enough. And then so she decided to, although she doesn't look at all pregnant when she dies, so I don't know. But
she thought that he got her pregnant, right?
I guess so. They leave it sort of ambiguous whether or not she truly believed she was pregnant, or Obviously, if she did, it would have been him, her brother. But anyway, that's why he blames him, because just he happened to see it. He told. It's funny, like, why did you go? Like, it's interesting that he decided to go after him because he's the original witness. But even though he's the original witness, he only told one person, then probably forgot about it. That's all he did. He told one person, then transferred and completely forgot about it. I mean, he does get vengeance on the other guy because he kills him. But you think you wouldn't? Shouldn't your elaborate, crazy revenge scheme be on the guy that actually blabbed it to everybody? So it's an interesting angle from there, because it's actually the friend, right, that is the one who blabs to everybody. Dae-soo, like I said, told him and then just forgot about it and went on with his life. And that was sort of part of the reveal too, because he's like it's pretty, when they have their confrontation at the end, he's like, it's pretty tricky of you. Their whole thing is you want me to remember, but you've drugged me and messed with my memories. And he's just like, you didn't forget because of anything I did. You forgot because you forgot, because it wasn't important to you.
It's just an awful big stretch to like devote a large part of your life to. I mean, he's just looking for someone to blame at this point, right? So he's just looking. So Dae-soo's there. I guess he'll just put all the blame on him.
I mean, he does blame himself to a certain extent too, and he commits suicide in the end, I think, right, because he can't. As he says, once he has his revenge, he says, what is there to live for? And there really wasn't anything else to live for. And you have to think it's not just because he's sad because he misses her, but he also has to blame himself for a little. It's interesting what the girl herself says. She has no regrets, which is not the type of thing people usually say when they commit suicide, right? So I think that's something that a lot of people miss in the movie. She didn't kill herself because she was so ashamed or anything. She killed herself because of what society, would think. Right. Now, I don't want to turn this into a big incest thing, but I have to say, and I don't know if this will alienate people, but I've read a lot of stories and seen a lot of things that use the incest angle. And I know it's usually there to like shock you or disgust you, but a lot of them I'm more or less sympathetic towards them, and I'm on their side. To me, it's usually in such a way that makes sense to me. Like, to me, he and his sister loved each other. I guess that's wrong, and it's wrong. Okay, but it is what it was. Nobody was a victim of anybody else. It just happened, and that doesn't bother me. In A Song of Ice and Fire, I think a lot of people, it was easy for them to demonize somebody like Jaime Lannister and not like him. Jaime's my favorite character. It doesn't matter to me at all that he was in love with his sister. The way it was written, the way it was presented, it just made sense to me. I was like, yeah, I get it. They were in love and they had to hide it from the world, blah, blah, blah. Like, some people, like, that was one of the things that revolted them about them, and they could never cheer for them. And I mean, it's not like they didn't do bad things. Of course they did. If you're familiar with the books or the show, they do bad things. But I mean, that's one of the things I like about books and shows like that, is nobody's all the way good, nobody's all the way bad. People do, good guys do bad things, bad guys do good things. It's all from your perspective. But I know there were certain people, they could never root for Jaime because of that. He had been in love with his sister, he fucked his sister, and I mean, I get it, but to me, it doesn't repulse me or bother me at all. And I know if people who know me might be really weirded out. It's like, don't you have a sister? Yeah, I do. And no, you better believe me that there's no incestuous thoughts there. I'm just saying, I've just never had a problem with it, at least as if it's well written in a lot of fiction where you have that. Like, what's a famous one? What is it? Flowers in the Attic. In Flowers in the Attic,
I was gonna bring that up.
The older sister and the older boy fall in love. And given the circumstances, it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't disgust or repulse me. Like, it makes sense to me. Like, I don't like hate them, and I'm not disgusted by them, and I don't even really pity them. I'm just like, it is what it is type thing. So it's funny. It's not like I'm just like, incest is awesome or anything like that. I just mean, in a lot of stories, it doesn't push me away from the characters if it's well done. I feel like it's well done here. And I do have to say, one thing I forgot about the movie was, like, the sister is so goddamn beautiful. I remember I was obsessed with her for years. Holy God. So that kind of hit me in the face. I was like, God, I forgot how pretty she was. That actress was Yoon Jin-soo. I wonder if I've seen her in other things, but God, she was a knockout. She's young too. She's not even 40 yet. She's about my age.
Wow, she would have been young in this movie then.
Yeah, she only would have been 19. She only would have been 19 or 20, which makes sense because she was playing a high school student.
Right.
She also has a brief cameo in Sympathy for Lady Biddens, but no, she didn't do a ton of stuff. This is the only thing besides her cameo. The only other thing I saw her in. But I mean, she's the most powerful thing in the movie for me. And part of it doesn't even have to do with the movie. Some of it is just I have a strong, strong attraction to her. But so that was another thing I'd almost sort of forgotten about. But just seeing her and seeing her eyes again just like knocked me over.
Mm-hmm.
But
you know,
anyway,
another
yeah. So there's lots
another
of stuff
example.
Yeah, sorry.
We got a little bit of a lag. Blue Lagoon.
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
another one
I can't
that
tell
came to
on
mind.
my end. That's not incest.
Blue Lagoon.
Though.
They're brother and sister, aren't they?
I didn't think so. Are they? Oh, I can't remember. It's been so long.
I thought they were.
I really can't remember.
And they had a kid.
I'm gonna have to check on that. Yeah, maybe. I think maybe they were. But yeah, it's been so fucking long since I've seen it. But again, it's something you kind of understand. I mean, they're on an island together, alone. That's it, and they're going through puberty at like the same time.
I think it's a natural human reaction to not be attracted to your siblings and relatives, because we need genetic diversity in order to not have fucked up children as mammals.
I know, and it's funny.
Oh, go ahead.
And this is not me to come down on the pro incest side again, but for me, it has always just been about like approximation, or not, what's the word, or proximity, really, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. For instance, my friend Ryan, who we've seen, has a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than us, and she was always very pretty. And I remember like my parents, like my mom would like tease me about it, like saying, this is back when she was super young, just saying, oh, she's gonna be a pretty girl, like you might take her to prom or something. I was like, fuck, no way. But it was true that as we got older, a lot of Ryan's friends were very noticed of that she was pretty, and he'd give they do their joking not joking stuff with him, right, about her. Mm-hmm. I never did. I wasn't blind. She was pretty, but because of the way Ryan and I were connected and we grew up, I could not see her that way. We weren't in any way related, but I could not see her that way. But I could totally understand like having some, like, I don't know, long lost sibling or cousin that you didn't know at all, and they just show up and you fall for them. That makes sense. I remember years ago there was a case about this they were in their 20s, this German man and woman, and they had been brother and sister, but they were separated when they were like 2 or 3 years old or something like that. And one of them had gone through some channels. I don't know who they hired or looked into, but they managed to track the other one down, knowing that this was the sibling. But they fell in love, and I think they managed to get married somewhere. And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, gross," and I get it. They're literally brother and sister, but they didn't have that connection. They were separated their whole lives, and then they met as adults and fell in love. So I don't know what's right or wrong there. I'm just saying I wouldn't be so quick to condemn that, is all I'm saying. So I know I'm super pro incest, and I'm always looking up incest porn, but I don't know. And a lot of this stuff, like I when it's well done, like I understand it. Is the type of thing, and it doesn't make me root against a character or hate a character. And of course, what's interesting is like unknowing incest is used as a weapon in this movie, right? Like that's like kind of the main part of the revenge is to force him to unknowingly commit incest with his daughter, and when he finds out, it breaks him completely, just shatters him.
Yeah,
and I don't really like how it's written in the plot summary here on Wikipedia either, too, because what it says here is Woo Jin then reveals that Mi-do is actually Dae-soo's daughter, and that he had orchestrated everything using hypnosis to guide Dae-soo to the restaurant, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so that he would experience the same pain of incest that he did. I don't think that's really true, because it's completely different situations and a different kind of pain, His pain of incest was like he just had a forbidden love. He and his sister loved each other in a way that was not acceptable to society, and it led to her taking her own life. The pain of incest he's giving to this guy is finding out like he accidentally had sex with his own daughter, whom he only had fatherly feelings for,
Right.
And if he had known, he wouldn't have done anything. So it's a different kind of thing. So I don't really like how it says that in the Wikipedia here, as if like, you know, incest ruined my life, so I'm not going to ruin your life with incest. I don't think it's that simple, really. I think that's kind of a cop out putting it that way. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the extreme lengths that Woo Jin goes to are interesting. It's like, how realistic of a villain is he? I don't know, but then again, it's not exactly a realistic world where you can just, if you're rich enough and you know the right people, you can pay to have somebody kidnapped and then imprisoned for an indefinite amount of time. I don't know.
Yeah, so he does 15 years in jail. I just say there's,
no idea why.
But he does 15 years in jail, and he's having sex with his daughter, and he's in love with his daughter in a romantic way, you know. So it's really fucked up, really, really fucked up. But he played the long game.
Yeah, he did. Well, that was one of the things. Like, and there's some. I mean, it is a pretty good like villain speech, as villain speeches go, like for their confrontation, because he says, you know, all this time you've been asking the wrong questions. No wonder you can't get the answers you want. Because your question was, you know, why did he lock me up for 15 years? He's like, you should have been asking, why did I let you go after 15 years? Which is really the kicker, because he's waiting for her to, I guess, get to a certain age and to be isolated. And of course, there's an early red herring in the movie to help throw you off that, because she does seem to try to help him find his daughter, and there's like some false trail about the daughter being adopted, like in some, I don't know, like European country or something like that, just to throw you off. So we haven't brought up the fact that Spike Lee did a remake of this movie 10 years later, an American remake, starring Josh Brolin in the main role. And I don't think you ever saw it, because you were just like, I'll hate it, so I won't watch it. I watched it, and it's fine. It's completely unnecessary. But I will say they added an extra wrinkle in that movie to make it that a little better. Because, okay, so in the remake, during his years of imprisonment, when just like in the original, he's, you know, his only link to anything is the TV, right? He's always watching stuff through TV. In the original, they have like a nice montage showing the time going by and some of the historical events. Some of them are Korean, some of them are worldwide, things like that. It shows the handover of Hong Kong to China. It's got Princess Di's death. But anyway, so it's the same thing in the Josh Brolin movie where he's watching the TV. But at one point, he's watching a TV program that for some reason is about his daughter, because the idea here is that the daughter has become some sort of like cello prodigy or something. So it shows his daughter like with adopted parents. And then the twist, I mean, I don't think you can care about spoilers, because it's the same thing, is that, you know, the villain made all that up. That wasn't the daughter. That was just, you know, it was a fake TV program. He put a fake TV program out there to make him think that's his daughter and that's what she looks like now. So that there'd be no way when he met his actual daughter he'd ever think that. So it does make it a little extra, whereas this movie doesn't do that. So that's one thing I kind of like about the remake, but that's about it.
So it's the same,
that a little extra mile.
Same premise though, right? He does have sex with his daughter in the remake.
Yeah, I mean and like I said, this makes it a little better, I think, because it helps throw him off.
Yeah, because me too, Albert.
Because in the Josh Brolin version, he thinks he knows what his daughter looks like, because he sees the program shortly before actually getting released. So he's seeing some actress playing his daughter, and he thinks that's really her, and he thinks she's living with an adopted family because it's their thing. And you find out that's all bullshit. That was just orchestrated and made up. It wasn't a real program. It was just something put onto the TV for him to see. So I did like that. Speaking of that, though, I remember about maybe 10 years ago, around the time of the remake, maybe this is why I decided to watch it. I was in Sydney, and I watched this movie, the original, with my mother. Interesting movie to watch with your mother. And I have to say, she took the fun out of it, because, man, she caught on quick. Like, he met her in the bar or whatever, in the sushi place, and my mother's like, that's his daughter. It's like, and then my mother's like, is he going to wind up having sex with his daughter? I was like, you were really sucking the fun out of this, but yeah, he is going to wind up having sex with his daughter. Like, my mom caught on super quick.
Wow. I was way late in the game before I figured it out.
The first time I watched it, I didn't, you know. But what else have we got there? We've got, of course, the warden of the private prison. He's an interesting character. I don't know who they got, but he's pretty good at playing like that kind of scumbag. It's like the kind of like the lowest kind of criminal. That's something that Park Chan-wook is really good at finding. Because remember when we did Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, it's like, you want like the worst kind of criminals? Here you go. Remember, there's that gang of organ dealers whose job is to like steal organs from people, beat them up, and like one of them spends his time like raping corpses and stuff. It's like, here's the bottom of the barrel, the very worst of the worst of criminal scum. And like, I'll give that something credit for this movie. As powerful and edgy as this movie goes, there is no rape in this movie. Mm-hmm. Usually, if movies are going to shock people like that, there's probably like rape. There's no rape in this movie. Now, the other movie, the rape is not really rape. It's necrophilia. But, necrophilia, a lot of people would think is probably even stronger than rape. I remember when I talked, you didn't actually realize he was having sex with a corpse. I had to tell you that. But that's what it was. One of the the big guy
in that movie
was having sex.
I remember. I watched it again and I figured it out.
Yeah. And his own mom was in the room, right? Like the mom is like the leader of the gang. Like that's one of her sons. Yeah. His mom's in the room while he's fucking a corpse. So yeah. So in this, the criminal scum aren't quite that weird, but they're pretty low. It's just like, yeah, you pay us and we'll just keep people in this crazy prison. And I've got like a whole gang of guys to like beat the shit out of people. And we torture people if we feel like it. Now, again, torture is a big part of this movie. And both sides are willing to use it. I mean, that is really part of the roaring rampage of revenge that Odae-soo goes on, and that he's willing to torture this guy, and he rips a bunch of his teeth out, which is mouth stuff really bothers me because my own history of my own mouth. I can just remember like how bad it was getting teeth pulled like by dentists with the actual stuff, how awful that was. So like just have some guy just use like a wrench or something. Oh my god.
Well, he had the claw end of the hammer. He didn't do it, but he was going to. The guy with the gold teeth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he winds up replacing with the gold teeth after he rips out a bunch of them. But we'll get to the hallway scene. I was gonna say, so that was one of my favorite things about and I mean I loved it. Maybe my favorite live action show ever was the Netflix Daredevil show. And in either the second or third episode, there's an amazing hallway fight that definitely takes cues from this movie. One, it's done all in one shot. And two, even though it's a superhero and Daredevil was obviously, on a higher level than other people, he's still human. He's not Spider-Man. He's not a superhuman. So we see that it's kind of like this movie. Like by the time you get towards the end of the scene, like all the characters, they're really laboring and they're really tired and they're just sort of winging punches. And so I love that. I watched that over and over again. That's one of my favorite things ever. It was really what cemented me like that this Daredevil show was going to be good. The fight choreography in that is incredible. And it's so perfect for Daredevil style. But anyway, that's the first thing I thought of was watching. It's like, oh my god, it's like the cool hallway fight in I mean, it's even better than this, but I mean, this is still really good. And you got to give full credit to this.
Is that still available on your Netflix? Those the Netflix original shows? So. It's not on mine either. I got rid of Netflix.
They're on Disney. They're on Disney. They're on Disney Plus now.
Okay. So after a certain period of time, the rights went back to Disney, I guess.
I guess so, something like that. A lot of people were concerned, it gets censored on Disney Plus. It's not. Everything's there. Like all those Netflix shows with their explicit violence and sex, they're all intact, at least on my Disney Plus, because I've just out of curiosity, I've checked them out. So, yeah.
I'd like to go watch some of those again.
They're not canon though, which is kind of too bad. Because they kept Charlie Cox as Daredevil, and his introduction was, if you watch the She-Hulk show, there's Charlie Cox again as Daredevil, playing pretty much the same thing, but he's not the Daredevil from Netflix. He's not going to have the same history, which I think is unfortunate because it was so perfect.
Why? Yeah, but, why? Oh well, it doesn't matter.
I don't know. They kept the actor, but they threw out the story. I don't know.
That's the stupidest thing I've heard.
Go their own direction. I don't know.
No.
What you mean, to bother to keep the same actor but to not keep the story? Yeah, it is. It's definitely very odd.
I mean, it's already out.
Plus,
there,
it also and I mean, Yeah, and he's not the only one they kept, right? They kept Kingpin too.
Oh, they did. That's cool.
It's the same Kingpin. He's yeah.
I like
If
him.
you watch Hawkeye, that's where Kingpin first shows up. If you watch the Hawkeye show, kind of spoilers for Hawkeye, but it's been out for a while. But yeah.
Spoilers for Hawkeye. Don't let
anyway.
him drive your snowblower or your snowplow.
Yeah, Jeremy Renner.
I think they're trying to say it was like a mechanical defect of his tractor or whatever the hell he was driving. His own tractor ran him over. Yeah. He's lucky.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, it looked like it definitely could have killed him. Yeah, it definitely could have killed him. It's like the Anton Yelchin situation.
Yeah. Freak accidents, man.
So I don't like how recovered is he? Like, can he still
do
Hawkeye stuff? Because I've heard like he won't be able to.
I guess they probably don't know yet.
Recovered, but like he can't. They just still don't know. Okay.
I mean, last I heard was like a week after it happened. Someone, I guess his wife or someone, typed up a tweet on his account. He's like, "I still can't type, but I'm doing all right," and that's all I've heard. That was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I saw that. Hope he's all right. I'm a big fan of his work.
Yeah.
He killed, the Jeffrey Dahmer role.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't seen that, but I saw that. That's way back in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the? Speaking of, oh, I guess you didn't because you don't have Netflix. But Netflix made just did a like mini series on Dahmer. I was surprised how tastefully done it was, because as it's always brought up, like, do we need to like bring this back up and real people die? Do we really need to get everybody talking again and remind the families that this crazy guy killed their people and stuff? But actually, I was surprised by how tasteful it was. Oh, here's the new edition. Are you coming? She's right here.
Oh yeah.
Like to chew on wires. You got to learn that. Oh, there we go. Okay.
So this is Cole's big news.
Yeah, that's we only saw a piece of her, but that's Camille, my new cat, who I got just before Christmas. And I'm sure she'll probably make some appearances on here. She's doing it. Oh, now she's going to go look at she's trying to knock over my laundry basket. But yeah, one thing about having Wednesday for so many years was like, it's not like I forgot what it was like when she was a kitten and stuff, but I mean, she and I lived together for so long. I was just used to her just knowing everything. So now I've got this. She's a little older than most kittens. She's close to a year old. She's older. I was going to get, I wasn't even looking at her when I was at the shelter. I was looking at much younger kittens, but she sort of asserted herself. That's a whole story. But anyway, so I took her, but I mean, yeah. So she doesn't know the stuff Wednesday knew. She gets on everything. She chews everything, so I'm kind of surprised that she has held back so far as me being on camera. Because as well behaved as Wednesday was, as people know who watch long enough, like she would get jealous and want to get front and center when I would do this. Like she'd ignore me for hours, and I come in here, set it up, and then she'd be all over me. So that's Camille, her name, or Cammy, and she's the new addition. And we'll see how it works out. Right now, she's just having some food. I moved her dish into my room, the bedroom here, but I'm sure she'll pop up and just hopefully she doesn't unplug anything or anything like that. Because one thing I remember, speaking of like headphones, is like actually one thing I do remember Wednesday is she destroyed 2 pairs of headphones, including a pretty expensive pair. There was a pair I'd paid like $69.95 for, and Wednesday chewed through its cord, and that was the second one she did. So it's not like Wednesday wasn't destructive when she was a kitten. In fact, Wednesday was a very violent kitten. Wednesday was like, she wasn't angry or anything, but she just bit. She did a lot of biting. Like it was part of how she expressed herself. And she used to like attack my sister and I, because this is back when my sister and I had an apartment together. That's when we first got her. And she used to like chase my sister to the bathroom every morning, biting her ankles. And she bit pretty hard. Cammy's much more gentle than that. And unlike Wednesday, who grew to hate other cats and stuff, she actually got along with the boys instantly. They didn't accept her right away, but she was fine, even when they were rude to her. This is my parents' cats, and I know nobody's interested in this, but my mother has 2 cats, one who's 13 going on 14. and they're both boys. And Wednesday, for most of her life, especially when she started living in this building, we absolutely hated it. Every time we went to Sydney, we had to keep them separated. And I kept Cammy separate at first, but I tried to introduce them because I didn't want that same situation happening. And Sasha, the older one, who's usually so kind, he was freaked out by her. I don't know why. She's this little thing, but he was afraid of her. And Sasha, who's so kind and calm, like he would like hiss and growl. And Theo didn't seem happy either. And she just didn't react. She didn't care. It was like she knew they'd come around. And by the time we got to like the week after Christmas, they were interacting. I had her out again, and they all got along. So that's something that's nice to know that when I go back to my parents' place, I don't have to play this game of musical cat chairs, keeping everybody separated. Yeah. Plus, I just felt so bad for Wednesday because Wednesday was just miserable. She was a very stubborn cat. She just made up her mind she was going to be mad the whole time, and you just couldn't do anything about it. But Cammy's much more easygoing. I mean, I don't know how long she lived in the shelter, but obviously she got very used to other cats. So, yeah. I'd asked myself a long time, if I was going to get another cat or something like that. I was saying, if I get another cat, isn't that like an anchor to keep me here? But I don't think so. I think she can come to Japan with me if the time comes I go to Japan. If I had to bribe government officials, so be it. I won't leave her.
I don't think they're real strict about that stuff.
I don't know. Some countries can be about weird stuff. Remember like Johnny Depp and back when he was still together with Amber Heard? Like it was a big thing. Australia was mad at them for bringing dogs or something. Something like that. I don't know.
I remember that. I don't remember why.
I have a cousin who lives in England, and she brought her Canadian cats over, no problem. So I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. She's back there.
I mean, they may
but
like
I'm sure
want
she'll
to
probably
see
make future appearances.
Like a vaccination list or something, but other than that, I don't know why.
Yeah, maybe they brought them in without going through the proper channels or something.
I think was the problem.
Yeah.
With those two.
Anyway, I'm sure Cammy will make some cameos. Oh, it's a pun on her name. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm happy to have her. After a year and a half of an empty apartment, it really does make a difference, I have to say.
God.
So
can't believe it's been that long.
Because I was really, unsure. My parents had come up and we were going to drive back to Sydney soon before Christmas, and I said I'll look on the site, and I looked on the site, and there were of the various SPCAs around, and the one in Dartmouth, which is the closest one here, really didn't have kittens at all, and they had a couple cats. But it had all the ones in the province, so I was looking at various ones. And she's actually from Pictou, which is a place just outside New Glasgow. So it was on the drive back anyway. And there were two cats there. They were kittens younger than her, and they were boys. And they all had names. Her name there was Florence, actually. And the name, because they have to give them profiles and stuff. So there were two kittens, and they were brothers, I guess. And they were called Scoop and Douglas. And I thought, okay, maybe this is meant to be, I'll get Scoop or Douglas. I'll get one of those guys. And the next morning, I checked the morning we were going to drive there. I checked the site, and Scoop was gone. And I thought, shit, did somebody take Scoop? And I thought maybe that's better because now I don't have to choose between them. I'll just get Douglas. Right. I won't have to, make that awful choice. And I called them. They opened at 10, and I called them a bunch of times. They didn't answer, so I don't know what's going on. It was a terrible day. It was just December 17th, and here throughout, not just in Halifax, whatever, it just rained. It was cold rain. And it took us forever to get out of the city because first we went to Costco, which of course was a nightmare because it's like the week before Christmas. And we're in Costco, and I just on getting out of the car, I dropped my phone and broke its screen, and I was so depressed and upset. Oh, wow. My screen's still all messed up. It's going to cost a fortune to fix. But anyway, I was all depressed. And then while I was in Costco, the shelter called me back, and they said, "Oh, our internet's been down. In fact, it's still down. We didn't see." Because I actually filled out an application online for one of them. So we didn't see any of that till now. And they're like, yeah, Scoop is gone. And they're like, we have worse news for you though. Somebody just came in and took Douglas, right? So I said, oh, and they said we still have a lot of cats here though. If you'd like to look, and I said, oh yeah, I'll come by. But then I said to my parents,
Lawrence is available.
I don't want to go. Yeah. And I said, I don't want to go. Florence. I said, I don't want to do it. I said, I don't think it's, and I just said, I don't think it's meant to be. I said, this was the only window. I said, I thought if I got a cat before Christmas, I get it. But otherwise, I'm not going to look for a cat. And she's like, you shouldn't just talk yourself out of it. And I was like, I don't know. I just don't think it's right. And they said, you said you'd go. I said a lot of things. Who cares? But we did go, and it was still raining. It was slow going. It took us a little while because like most shelters, it wasn't right in the town. It was off on some fucking windy road. But anyway, we found it, and I walked around for a long time. And they had basically, as far as kittens go, like under a year, they had 3 groups. They had 2 groups of like 3 or 4, and then they had a group of 2. They had 2 brothers that were just in the cage above her. And I didn't look at her, like I knew she was there, but I was thinking too old. They said she was a year old. I don't think she's a year. She's probably, I put her at maybe 8 or 9 months. We arbitrarily gave her birthday May 1st, so we'll say she'll be a year old on May 1st. But anyway, I wasn't looking at her, and I was looking at the groups of kittens, and they weren't very active or anything. And two of the bigger groups of kittens had both been feral. And there was the person there said, they were feral, but we're rehabilitating them. They've made a lot of progress. They said, but we think if you take like one of them, go back to a big house, which is where I was going, they might go and hide on you. And I was like, maybe I should narrow that down. And then so I narrowed it down to like basically 1 from each group. And then there was the group of 2 that were above her, 2 brothers, sort of blackish. And then I just said, well, maybe it's better. They're more outgoing, right? And they're like, yeah, they are. And I said, I guess I should take one of them. So then I looked at them, and basically 1 was eating and 1 was asleep. So I thought, I don't know, I'll take the one that's actually awake. And I was literally going to tell them, okay, this is after 15 minutes of walking back and forth and stuff that. And then Cammy, who was below them in her cage, stood right up on her hind legs and sort of chirped at me. And I called my mother and I said, she's standing in hind legs. That's what I told Wednesday to do. And she said, well, okay. And I said, yeah, I'm going to take her. So that's why I took her. She's funny too, like, because Wednesday, as cats, cats meow. Wednesday always said meow. She doesn't meow or meow. She makes weird chirping, squeaking sounds. It's very cute. It's very weird. But anyway, I didn't want to go on to the story because I know it's not as interesting. You love to tell the story. I know it's not as interesting as I think it is. But anyway, she was great. I put her in the carrier, and we had a very long drive home, much longer than the usual drive because we were late in the day, and by the time it got dark, my dad crawled because he really shouldn't be driving in the dark anymore. When we drove back, I drove. But so we crawled, and so and she didn't make a sound. Like, she traveled really well. So very proud of her, and it's nice to have her. But anyway, there's her origin story. I'm sure everybody's riveted. I know it's not as interesting as I think it is, but I'm very glad to have her. So she's a nice cat.
That's good. I'm glad you got another one.
Does Dying Breed think I'm stoned? I'm just reading the comments here. I'm not stoned. I'm totally sober, yo. You got to believe me. I just always talk like this. I don't have to be stoned to talk a lot. You need to watch the show more. Anyway, she's gone off somewhere to chew on other things. But oh yeah, I was looking at some things here. So I mean, it's a movie that makes a lot more sense, of course, the second time you watch it, because now you understand, like, they've both been given hypnotic suggestions and things like that, right? Because it's kind of funny to think, like, you're like this young, fairly attractive girl, and then some weird middle-aged guy comes in, acts all weird, and he looks all crazy, and then he's like, I want to eat something alive, and then you watch him, like, eat an octopus alive. It's like one of the most disgusting things you'll ever see, and you're like, I'm going to bring him home. For those wondering, that was CGI, or was not CGI.
Oh, right.
They had to use 4 different ones.
Don't they eat octopus pretty regularly like that over in Asia? Like, I mean, they eat them alive, right?
Yeah, but they cut them. They don't just stuff them down regularly. Yeah. What he did was still very strange and disgusting and not done. Oh, they will serve them to you live. They'll serve them to you live, but you're supposed to, like, cut it up and kill it. You're not supposed to just grab it whole and go, oh, with its tentacles going everywhere. So
I just think it's probably more shocking to a Western audience than it would be to, someone who's familiar with eating, octopus and squid and stuff like that.
The eating of a squirming octopus is a delicacy, exists in East Asia, though it's usually killed and cut, not eaten whole and alive.
Okay.
The squirming is a result of posthumous nerve activity. So yeah, sometimes you might see video of somebody eating and it's squirming, but it's already dead, actually. It's nerve stuff, which is still pretty fucked up, but at least it's not alive. Yeah. But he made a point of wanting to eat something alive. And I don't know if that's part of his hypnotic. The post-hypnotic suggestion was just to, like, go to the place, not necessarily to be completely disgusting. But anyway, she's like, wow, I like you. I'll take you home with me.
Yeah. You're weird. Come on back. But
You're a real
I
go-getter.
don't like the way octopus tastes personally, so I'm totally cool with not eating it
Never.
because
I
I think those fucking things they're freakishly smart. I don't know if they're aliens or what, but they are really, really smart creatures, and I don't want to eat something that's that smart.
Yeah, it's not right to eat something like that. But yeah, I've never ventured. I'm not adventurous enough to try it. I mean, I like various fish. I live in Nova Scotia. Obviously, I eat fish, but
I've just tried it in like
never
sushi
really
rolls.
liked sushi. Yeah.
Oh,
See, like
really?
my Chinese girlfriend, she likes sushi, and I used to get it for her all the time. So sometimes I would like sample it, and I didn't hate it, but it was just
Yeah.
like ever since her, I've never gotten it. Once I never felt like the reason because actually just down the street where I got it, every year the sushi place down the street from me is like voted best sushi in the city.
Oh
I
man,
don't
I would
care.
love that. I love
Nice
sushi.
Japanese place. I mean, I'm
I'm
kind of it's fine. Like it doesn't disgust me or anything like that, but it's not something that I would it's not something that I seek out for myself. So yeah, so it's been quite a long time since I had any because I just used to get it for her.
I'm not a big fan of the raw stuff. I'll eat some yellowtail raw, but that's pretty much about it. Um, I like a lot more of the cooked rolls with like crab and
Yeah.
unagi and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it is interesting later on too, because he says, it doesn't matter how good hypnosis is or whatever, like you still can't really force people to fall in love. So it's like we set you up, but you still did it yourself. But it's interesting the conversation she has with him when he brings her home because she goes to the bathroom and she's not exactly stupid because she brings a big knife with her. She's like, okay, maybe I can't trust this guy. And he like immediately comes into the bathroom like and clumsily tries to rape her, and she just sort of like hits him, and he feels so guilty and horrible that he leaves. But then she comes out and just says, I don't blame you for that because I guess she already knows that did he already tell her he'd been locked up for 15 years? I don't know. But she's like, I don't really blame you or anything like that. And then she says, I will eventually have sex with you. She's just like, I'm just not ready yet, but I'll let you know when I'm ready. It's like, wow, that was easy. But then you find out it's probably part of the hypnosis or whatever that she'd gone through to give it up that easily. And I don't know if
She's
it's
got
more
daddy
squicky or
issues.
not, but but given and then some, but given what happens when they finally do have sex, she's talking about how it hurts and she's in pain. I assume that's probably referencing that she's a virgin. I assume. I don't know if that makes it worse or better. I don't know. They put it in there.
Oh,
That
it
at
doesn't
first
make it better.
you know,
It does
it
not
doesn't
make it
make
better.
it doesn't make it better.
It's I'm just gonna assume he's got a
I mean, I
massive
do.
cock because I don't want to think about that part of it.
I guess, but oh, I do like. I mean, we'll just take out for a second the incest and just as a sex scene. I have to give credit to Park Chan-wook in that like he's always willing to film a fairly graphic sex
He'll
scene,
be
which
back.
we talked about before, has mostly disappeared from cinema in the last 25 years or so. You don't see graphic sex scenes in too much. I'm not saying most movies don't need a graphic sex scene. I know that. In
I
fact,
agree.
we've had the conversation before where I'm mostly annoyed by graphic sex scenes. We had the whole conversation. It's like, what is the point? Are we supposed to make the audience all horny? You're watching Monster, and it's this movie about a woman in her desperation and wanting to help her son and blah blah blah. But then we have a fairly, especially for an American film, graphic sex scene between Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton, and I just remember feeling so confused watching the movie. I was like, wow, this is a lot more graphic and longer than I expected. I was like, what am I supposed to be absorbing here as the audience? Am I just supposed to be getting horny? Like, because the rest of the movie is a serious drama, and I understand them having sex is a plot point. It's not like you shouldn't have it, but I was just surprised by how drawn out and graphic it was. I don't know. So I go back and forth on how I feel about how sex scenes get used in movies. But all I can say is that Park Chan-wook, he goes the extra mile. I mean, holy God. If you want something that's not porn but still pretty darn tittillating, watch The Handmaiden, for God's sake. Oh my God. Remember The
Yeah, that one will get
Handmaiden?
you going. Yeah.
And there's
It's a
some,
good movie too.
like, that, for years, that was the most, like, hardcore lesbian scene I'd ever seen until, did you ever see the French film Blue is the Warmest Color?
I know what that is, but I have not seen it. That's got the actress
Yeah, well,
from the French
there's a sex
Dispatch.
scene
I
in that.
looked her up.
Yeah.
The
The
one
sex
that
scene in that is
the
like
guard.
more. It's practically porn because like what can't you really do in like mainstream sex scenes? Well, penetration. Well, there's no penetration here. It's two girls, right? So it's just like when you see them like furiously 69ing and fingering, you're seeing that for real. So you might as well be watching porn. That's not simulated sex. So, but I still like the handmaiden one better because my thing for Asians. But I just mean those are two extremely graphic girl on girl sex scenes in cinema. So Park
I think
Chan-wook.
particularly American audiences are really more taboo. I mean, I think especially like France, they don't give a shit about nudity. Like that's not going to make
Yeah.
the news
Well, I mean, the
there.
other part of
Whereas that would be a big part of the movie. In a Western audience.
yeah. I mean, in Blue is the warmest color. I know both actresses were over 18, but I'm pretty sure their characters weren't supposed to be, or at least one of the characters wasn't supposed to be. So I guess that would be sort of a sticking point too, that one of the characters is supposed to be underage. But again, what does it matter if it's a character? It's a character. It's not.
Right.
I don't know. People will always have I don't know. People. I'll just leave it alone. I'll just leave it alone. I've already come out as super pro incest. I'm not going to touch the other stuff. Before everybody thinks I'm a complete deviant.
This is all going to be in a supercut someday.
Yeah. There's also a really weird ultimatum that happens too when he finally tracks Woo Jin Lee down too, because when he like tracks him down, he just says, well, you don't know why I did it, so I'll give you 5 days to find out the reason, and if you find out, you win, and I'll kill myself. But if you don't, I'll kill her. So that's also very odd, but interesting. Oh, there she goes. Sorry, she was doing her chirping thing. She has this red and white ball that she took from the house. It was actually Sasha's that she loved so much that I had to take it with her. One thing that makes her different from Wednesday, she carries toys. She likes to carry it, so she just carried it up and chirped at me. I can't play fetch right now, but she's cute. And then he also has that whole thing about like having like a heart condition, and that when he got a pacemaker made in, he paid the doctor extra to give him like a remote so he can just shut it off and kill himself, which is used very deviously at the end of the movie. It's really good. Remember how it's used? Yeah, It's pretty brutal. I love it. I do like also that when you finally get your flashback to the actual incident, it's quite long. I like that the movie takes its time there, and that it builds it up, because at first, like, he meets the sister just while he's messing around, and then he's just sort of walking around, and I don't know, I just like how slowly everything goes there. Like, I like that it really takes its time. I guess it's not super important, but it's just something I thought fit the story. Like, I can't remember if they did it that well in the remake, because I only saw the remake once and it was a long time ago. I might have to watch the remake again just to see how it compares, because I feel like, again, my memory could be wrong, but the remake might actually rush that scene a bit. I know, once again, it doesn't get as graphic, because once again, it's pretty interesting what he sees, the two of them doing. They're not just making out. It's pretty explicit. Then later he says stuff like, "You slept with your sister," and he's probably not wrong, but he didn't see him. He didn't see him do that. I'm sure it's understood that sometime before or after that, it's all left ambiguous, right? Like when they're together in the classroom and he's like feeling her and things like that. And it's interesting because you can see like she's not necessarily against it. She actually likes it. And there's the really weird bit with the mirror, right? It's pretty weird. She takes out the mirror to sort of look at herself while they're getting it on in a way. It's an interesting touch. But it helps show like it's not just the brother getting all horny and like forcing himself on the sister. Like, no, she likes it too. She's into it. She was only apprehensive because about where they were and worrying about being caught is really what it was. But again, maybe my memory's wrong, but I don't think the scene is that explicit in the remake. But
Oh, in the
I'll have
remake, I
to
was gonna
watch it
say.
again.
She probably is at least 18 'cause she shows her breasts in that scene. The sister.
Yeah. Yeah. The actress would have been 19 or 20 at the time. I said not bad. I mean, it's better than like a lot of the times when they're getting 30-year-olds to play high school students, because again, she's supposed to be a high school student.
Right.
But yeah, like she's I don't know. I hate being so susceptible sometimes because like she just knocks me out.
Mm-hmm.
Yujin Soo.
Well, it's like with that
that
Chucky TV show. I don't know if you've watched it at all, but it's actually kids, like young kids, and the blonde girl. I mean, she looks older than she is, but she's like 13 years old, like in the first season. And all these dudes are like lusting after her and stuff, and it's like, oh man, I don't know. That's probably why they do that.
I get
like
how that's uncomfortable, but at least it's realistic. As I said before, and it can be taken the wrong way, but I've said it lots of times. Like whether it's sex or violence, like we protect kids too much in movies, and I get that we should. Like again, I'm talking about child exploitation. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying like sometimes in movies, like they can't even hint at things. Like they're just way too protected. Like even if it's just violence. Something I like a lot about like when I rant on about Hong Kong action and stuff is, oh man, there's some Hong Kong movies where they do not give a fuck about them kids. They'll smack a kid around. They'll kill a kid. It's pretty awesome. Again, I like get some sick thrill out of seeing kids. I'm not saying that. Like I like sort of that they go that far is all I mean. Like I don't have anything against kids. I don't want to see children hurt. I'm just talking about a movie. Just talking about a movie, people.
It's fiction.
But yeah, just so many movies. Western movies are just so sanitized most of the time, as far as that. Like, if there's something sexual going on, like it's like the kids have nothing to do with it. Like I can remember sex being on my brain an awful lot when I was 12, 13. Yeah, and I'm not talking about scenes of kids engaging in sex. I'm just talking about the fact that it is around and they, it's in the world. There's no big, we'd like to put a big wall between it. It's like there's the adult world and there's the kid world, and here's the wall. Unfortunately, there's no fucking wall.
Cole's favorite movie is Cuties.
Like you're a parent. Yeah. I mean, I have seen Cuties, so we might as well go there. Big fan.
Next week.
I'll just say what I always said about Cuties before. The most fucked up thing about Cuties really is when you watch it and you see like a big part of it is like, basically tween girls doing like really sort of sexualized dancing in there, right? The fucked up part about watching that is thinking about how like in making the movie, somebody had to teach them that. Because in the movie itself, within the the story, it's simple. They taught themselves. These kids, they're watching these videos and they're like, oh, that's cool, we're going to do that. And so they teach themselves. But this is a movie, so there was some choreographer teaching that. And it's just like, it's kind of funny to like, and maybe a little uncomfortable to think about like on the set of that movie, like these, I don't know, 11, 12-year-old girls or whatever being taught by an adult, like, these sort of overtly sexual moves. They're like, this is just for the movie, don't do this outside of the movie. I don't know. I always thought that was probably the most interesting part of the movie. The movie's not bad. It's fine. I won't watch it again in case Netflix wants to put me on a list or something, but it's fine. I remember it caused like a big, huge thing. People were like, oh, remove it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, fuck your censorship. Like this normalizes child porn. It really doesn't. It has nothing to do with child porn, but people just, I get it. It's a hot button thing. It doesn't take much for people to go from 0 to 60 as soon as any of those things are put together. But no, I haven't watched the Chucky show. I'm not really interested in the Chucky show.
At the end of the day, I didn't really.
Child's Play was never really for me.
That was
Cuties,
and I probably wouldn't have watched it if it wasn't for all the controversy.
I mean, it was fine. Yeah. There also is. I always thought there was a funny moment in that too, where when they're sort of raising hell and they break into like the weird laser tag place without paying, and then the security guard catches them and he's like, I'm gonna call your parents and get you out of here. And like just to like confuse him, they start talking about how they're gonna be in that competition. So they start doing the dance in front of him when the second guy comes in, and he's like so confused by it, he's just sort of like gaping at them. And then like the other guy like smacks him in the head and he's like, seriously? It's pretty funny because I get it. Like I like how the actor plays it. Like it's not like the guy is like transfixed because they're, you know, he's really into these two. He's just so fucking baffled by it. I think it's actually a really funny moment, but it's a weird sort of European thing that wouldn't fly over here. But I get it. It's not, he's not perving on these girls. He's just completely dumbfounded by what he's seeing. It's actually a pretty funny moment. And then his friend like smacks him and the guy's like, seriously, dude. It's pretty funny. But yeah, it's an okay movie. 4 stars. But anyway, there aren't kids in this movie, really. It's just her growing up. I mean, she's 19, so kind of still a kid in a way, but a legal adult. Again, with our magic numbers. Well, she's 19, so it's all fine. Now we can have her in like 16 Bukkake videos. You know, that's cool.
Yeah.
The line, you know, we have to have our imaginary lines and rules somewhere. So, okay.
2 months ago, no, but right now, let's go.
Exactly, right? Just like I'm more weirded out, like, I don't know. I'm more like if a 20-year-old's dating a 17-year-old, that doesn't weird me out like some like 75-year-old dating like a 30-year-old. Like, to me, that's much more weird.
Not at all.
Didn't fucking Buzz Aldrin just got married? Did you know that?
On his birthday. He was like 95 or something like that.
On his like 93rd birthday. And I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying an old guy can't be happy, but I mean, how fucking old was she? Like 50?
She wasn't young, but he's old as fuck. So yeah, I mean, she was a lot younger than he was.
And it's still,
she was still.
Yeah. So I'm again, I don't want people to misunderstand me. I'm not coming down on this as immoral. I'm just saying it does sort of weird me out. I mean, they're both super old. It's nobody's taking advantage of anybody. There's nothing about a kid involved, but it weirds me out. Big age gaps just weird me out.
But, anyway. I mean, like 50 years is a bit much, but you know, I think, you know, when you get
he walked on the moon before she was fucking born.
Oh, well, probably well before she was born. But yeah, I mean, when you get so fucking old, I mean, 20 years is not a big deal anymore, you know? It's like,
like I said, 20 years, fine.
So, I mean, once you hit a certain age, I don't know if it's around 30 or what, but it's like, age doesn't really matter anymore, you know? Because I'm friends with people, you know, 10 years, 20 years older than me. I'm friends with people 20 years younger than me, you know? It's all...
I mean, you know. Well, friends is one thing. Dating is another. My biggest age gap in an actual relationship was 7 years. My last girlfriend, my last real girlfriend, was 7 years younger than me. And I guess that's
not a big deal.
Kind of young. I mean, I was
Jimmy Page's daughter is younger than his daughter.
I was like 35. Wife. I was 34, 35, and she was 27, 28. So, yeah.
That's not weird.
No, not weird. But I mean, I still felt it, you know, because there were some things. I mean, it's interesting too, because once again, it was she was foreign, so there's that too. But I mean, so there's always weird things when you're dating somebody who's foreign because, you know, some of the things you knew or know, you know, they didn't know about. But she had some of that too on just being young. And that was maybe the first time I actually felt that with somebody I dated. Where I was like, yeah, she's not the right generation for this or something like that. But some of that is just
would be weird
because like when I dated.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sure when I watch this over, it's just me talking over you. But from my end, it doesn't seem that way. So I'm sorry about that.
No.
I was just gonna say the aforementioned girlfriend from China, she was the closest in age to me. She was only just a little over a year younger than me. But still, being from China, there were things she just didn't know that made her kind of like a Martian anyway. Like, she didn't even really know much about... It's like, she knew Star Wars existed, and that's about it as far as Star Wars goes, right? Like, again, you don't have to be a movie fan or anything here, or big into cinema to know quite a bit about Star Wars and what it is and what it meant and stuff like. But to her, it was just... It was something. It happened. It existed. But I don't know, you know, things like that.
Yeah, that's the way my wife is. Like, she's never seen anything Star Wars, but she knows all the, you know, the characters, and you know, she knows who Yoda is, and who Obi-Wan is, and it's all kind of ingrained.
So it's been it's been around her exactly, but But yeah, for Hye-jeong, there were all sorts of things that, from our pop culture that just didn't permeate over there, at least not back then. More is coming now. For instance, I think Star Wars has become a much bigger thing in China in the last few years for sure. But yeah, but her being of a similar age from me, like growing up like in the 80s and 90s, yeah, I get it. So it's funny. So we didn't have an age gap, but we had like a culture gap. So sometimes there'd be things I talk about, like, that you just think everybody knows that, but she didn't know. But this was different. Some of this was age gap stuff, and it was the first time I'd ever really experienced that. I was like, yeah, I guess
she
you would know that.
was she like,
This one was
where's the
Filipino.
giant burn pile for all the bodies? Where do you guys burn all the bodies you execute?
Oh, God. Not quite that bad.
China
but
joke,
yeah,
right?
the other thing being the last girl being from Philippines, and Philippines have a much more fluid thing. Like, Philippine people are very familiar with American culture, I would say, compared to a lot of Asian countries. They're much closer to it. So yeah, so some of the things that I said, like, yeah, it was more of an age gap thing, but not a super big age gap. But anyway, get back to the movie at hand here. I mean, it's our first time back. I know we're going to be a bit scrambly, and I'm sure everybody was super thrilled and enthralled when I went on about how I got my cat. But I don't know. For our first one back, this one's got all sorts of good stuff, especially some good old fashioned incest. I mean, I wouldn't have put this together, but Park Chan-wook named the character Odae-soo to remind the viewer of Oedipus. I mean, it starts with an O. I guess we can give it that. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have made the connection.
I wouldn't have made the connection.
But, yeah. But I mean, there's the incest connection. And I mean, and that's interesting. I mean, when you go back to the classic of, like, what did Oedipus do? He didn't cut his tongue out. He blinded himself, right?
Okay.
People are a little fuzzy and they don't remember what Oedipus did when he found out that he'd fucked and married his mom. He blinded himself. He gouged out his eyes. But in this one, he cuts off his tongue, which makes sense because in this case, he does it because he wants to be able to keep himself from even, like, I don't know, I guess maybe even accidentally blurting out the truth to her. So it makes certain sense. Plus, you had that Chekhov's gun of those scissors. You knew those scissors were going to do something eventually, sooner or later, because they kept showing them.
Yeah.
There's a few different things like that pop up in the movie. But he just has that complete mental and emotional breakdown, just begging him to not reveal the truth to Meaty. And he's basically unimpressed by his dog impression, so he's not satisfied until he cuts the tongue off. He's like, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. You've fulfilled my revenge there, buddy. And getting back to Tarantino, apparently Tarantino was very moved by the flashback of the sister's suicide, because he said something like, you had this character who'd spent the whole movie being completely evil and despicable, but that flashback actually made me feel sorry for him when he killed himself. I think I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Because really, the movie, again, is not about good guys and bad guys. It's about vengeance and how it can twist you and mess you up. And yeah. I mean, nobody wins in the end of this movie, that's for sure.
So moving on to the very end of the film, right before the credits, he's being hypnotized again, correct? To forget that she is his daughter, right?
He seeks out the hypnotist to see if he can, get them to wipe that out of his mind.
So we're going to assume that they're still in a romantic relationship at this point.
Yeah. It's like, I think he feels like he can't just abruptly, without giving a reason why, just break up with her, right? And say, oh, we can't be together, and then not be able to tell her. I think that might be part of his reasoning behind it, because it's just, I think he just feels like he would break her heart if he was just like, oh, I gotta go, we can't be together. And she'd be like, why? Be like, oh, I can't tell you why, goodbye. I think he feels like it would just hurt her more. I don't know. So, yeah, it's a very ambiguous as to what actually happens, right? If it happens at all. He's hypnotized to erase the truth.
Happy ending, right? I mean, we're supposed to assume.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a super ambiguous ending, especially with that weird twisted smile he gives at the end, right? Because
It's
it's
like,
like,
yeah,
does he
allow my
still remember?
daughter
Well, that's what I mean.
again.
Like, does he actually still remember? Because there's different ways to look at it, like whether it even happened at all. He gets rehypnotized to erase the memory that she's his daughter, so they can have a happy life together. And then he has a smile that turns into like a weird grimace of pain, and it just ends there. So you're not sure, did the hypnotist actually work, or did he actually even ever meet the hypnotist? Did any of that actually fucking happened? You know, or any of it will be enough to like heal his mental scars, or but the other thing is like it's even ambiguous of whether or not it even actually happened, because when she finds him in the field, there's no sign of the hypnotist anymore.
Right.
So it's very open-ended there. So one thing you could put is he got the hypnotist to do it and it was a success and now he's happy. Or it could be the hypnotist did it, but it didn't fully take. And a part of him, a subconscious part, the part that she banished, is still there. And maybe that's what that grimace of pain is, right? Like on the surface, he's forgotten. He doesn't remember it's his daughter, but there's still some little piece inside of him that does remember and sort of comes up then again. And then the third thing is it didn't work at all. And then the other thing is maybe he never actually found the hypnotist, and he just knows, and he's just like, I'm resigned to this life now. I'll have to be my daughter's lover to keep her happy, but at least my tongue is cut off, so I can't tell her the truth. I don't know. So it's very ambiguous. There's multiple ways to interpret that, but definitely not happy. Not happy. I mean, the bad guy got what he wanted, for one thing. But again, he's not totally the bad guy, depending on how moved you are by that scene. I mean, again, he was the bad guy, but he did have some reasons for doing what he did, and he was in a lot of pain. But I mean, his plan worked. His plan worked so well, he was almost annoyed by it. It's interesting. Like he even criticizes. At one point, he even criticizes him for it, about about how easily he sort of fell into the trap. Because he knew, because one thing, like, there is a certain self-awareness on his part. Like he realizes this is a plan that relies on a lot of stuff like working out just right. Like if it doesn't, my plan isn't going to work. But it all does work anyway. So he is somewhat aware of that, and it is commented on that.
Yeah. You know the painting in his room where he's being held captive? It's like a man with a weird smile on his face. His grimace at the end almost kind of looks like that guy to me, the man in the
Hmm.
painting. I didn't know if that was
Maybe it's supposed to
significant
remind me.
at all.
I mean, it's not a painting that I recognize, so I don't think it's a callback to like a famous subject or anything. But I mean, still, it could be.
Because I mean, hell, he was 15 years looking at the same painting, so I'm sure it had some, significance to him.
Right. It's such a transformation for the character, but I mean, I get it. It's extreme because it's not just 15 years in prison, because it's 15 years in a bizarre, completely isolated prison. Also, with that, it's not like going to jail. Now, going to jail for 15 years is definitely going to change you and affect you, but this is a different thing, right? He's not going to jail. He's not getting visitation. He's just completely cut off from humanity. He doesn't even know why. Every time they do anything, they gas him, right? Like they gas him to like cut his hair and fingernails and things like that. Like so he doesn't even get that human contact. Anytime he has human contact, he's unconscious. So the only other human contact he has is like somebody's foot when they shove like the food through the door on the bottom there. Like that's his only human contact. So it's definitely very transformative, but it is interesting because you have to remember what kind of character he was at the start of the movie. He was just some schlub, and he was kind of a drunken idiot. The movie opens with him making a scene at the police station, being a drunken jerk. And even though he's, got a wife and kid, it's probably not a great marriage, and he's probably not a great father, you know. But he really gets hardened, and I get it, prison hardens you, but it's interesting. Like he becomes much more disciplined. He starts teaching himself how to fight. He gives himself tattoos. Holy shit, that would hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, like these are such extreme situations. It's really hard to put yourself in them and understand what you would do, because it's just like I don't know. I don't. It doesn't. I don't think it matters how long you keep me in solitary. I don't think I'm going to give myself tattoos. Also, I'm sure, I mean, I don't have kids, but I'm sure if I had the revelation that the woman I was in love with and had, furious, frantic sex with a little while ago was actually my daughter, that would be very bad psychologically for me. I still don't think you could make me cut off my own tongue. That's such an extreme thing to do, to willingly yourself just cut off your own tongue. But I mean, I don't know. His mental state is so fucked up even before the reveal that it is kind of believable. So I get it. It's definitely one of those movies where when you're looking at the various points of views of various characters, like, what would you do in this situation? What would you do if you were Woo Jin? Things like that. It's like, I don't know if it even occurred to me to have such a crazy, elaborate revenge, but hats off to him for pulling it off and coming up with it. Because one thing that is true about vengeance in this movie is, like, it's not about just killing somebody, because that's too simple, right? Somebody did something wrong to me. I don't know, they hurt me or they took somebody away. I'm going to kill them. That's too simple. This is much more elaborate. It's like, this is a way of really breaking somebody down and making them suffer. So, got to give the movie credit for that you have a character that really thinks this through. Like, what is a way to, truly hurt this person? Because, if I kill him, that's just too simple. It's not going to be satisfying. And as broken as he is after the revelation, and his big apology saying, I'll do anything so you don't tell her, right? And he's begging him not to have the hotel guy tell her the truth. He's just anything, so he apologizes profusely. He does the dog thing. He cuts off his own tongue, which satisfies him. But then since Woo Jin leaves the supposed button thing behind, he is still willing to think, you've made a mistake. Now I can kill you. So he's broken, but he's still not broken beyond thinking, I can get some satisfaction from this. I can kill you. And of course, it doesn't kill him at all. In fact, it plays some very disturbing audio for him.
Yeah. Just them having sex, right?
Yeah. I'm having fairly vocal sex. I mean, with quite a bit of dialogue thrown into it to make it that much more uncomfortable. So that works out pretty well for him. For Woo Jin, it's like, they're not just having sex, they're having loud sex, and I can hear how awkward and weird it is, even from a normal standpoint. Like, here, relive it right now, buddy. Relive it. But yeah, Woo Jin's plan, it just relies on a lot of stuff going. He's kind of annoyed it goes so well, and he says, like, it's such an obvious trap. You left me with the guy. Like, I can't believe you fucking did that. I mean, I get it though. That's kind of extreme too, because it's like, I did cut off his hand. You would think, but then you find out, like, that's part of it. He willingly gave up the hand so that he could help him with the plan. Again, very extreme, but everything in this movie is fucking extreme. So it's almost forgotten. It's almost an afterthought that, like, after he's abducted and thrown into prison, it's like, they kill his wife and frame her for the murder. Like, that's kind of buried in the movie. It's not that important, but I mean, he must have felt something for his wife, even if it wasn't a good marriage. But I guess he's just got so much else going on. I don't know. Because he never says something like, you killed my wife. Like, that's not in there at all. He's much more upset about being imprisoned than his wife being murdered.
Yeah. I mean, he admitted he was a terrible person, multiple times. So
what was interesting about that too is I think it was pretty realistic too, because it took being locked up for him to think about it. Because he says, when he finally stopped freaking out and stuff, and he started writing things down, he's like, I decided to, like, write down, like, all the bad things I did to people. And it was only then that it clicked, once he was writing it down, like, Jesus, I'm a shitty person. Because I think it's true for a lot of people who do shitty things and are bad people who hurt people. They mostly don't fucking take note of it. Like, you have to, like, actually make them take stock of it for them to realize. Like, that's because he says, like, I thought I lived an average life. And it's like, no, you didn't. You lived an average life in some ways, but in other ways, you were not average at all. You're a complete asshole who caused a lot of damage to a lot of people. Because the other thing is, the first time he meets Woo Jin and doesn't know who he is, he has a whole bunch of people he thinks it could be, because he knows there's a bunch of people that would want to take a revenge on him for various things. Remember, he yells like 5 or 6 different names. I mean, yeah, you haven't lived an average life. If you can think off the top of your head of 5 or 6 different people that might hate you enough to lock you up for 15 years and frame you for your wife's murder. And of course the ironic part of it all is like he doesn't even remember Woo Jin. Like to him, that was just something that like happened very quickly. He moved on and didn't think anything about it. And part of it's not entirely his fault. Like I said, he didn't do. He told one person who he told not to tell anyone, and the other person. So honestly, if the other guy had kept his mouth shut, nothing would have happened. I mean, the other guy does get his. He gets killed, but the elaborate revenge scheme is not for him. It's for O'Day.
How did they find out he was the one that saw them? Did she see him in her mirror when she was, moving her mirror around when they were having sex with the sister?
I mean, I think so. They know at the last second that they didn't see who. It was too fast. There was no way they could recognize the person, but they knew somebody saw them. So all they know is that somebody saw them, and then after that, that guy blabbed it. So I guess they traced it from him to his friend because she had seen him the same day, right? Because she saw him just. It doesn't exactly make clear how much time goes by, but she saw him slightly before she went and met her brother. So they didn't. I don't think they recognized him in the moment because he just like left really quickly. But they knew somebody saw them, and then I think the rest was just tracing it backwards and figuring it out. I think. But yeah, but still, that leaves to me like, why didn't you blame the other guy? He is the one that did all the blabbing that led to all the rumors. And what's funny about him too is that he doesn't even remember it properly. He doesn't remember the incest angle. He just remembers, oh yeah, she was like a big slut. That was the thing. She was a slut. She'd give it up for everybody. And then I think there was a thing that, she got pregnant, so she killed herself. He didn't actually remember the origin of it, which was, she was doing stuff with her brother. So that's really weird in a way. You think you wouldn't remember that part? That it was actually the brother she was doing stuff with? But all he remembered was, oh yeah, she was like a slut. And him saying it right in front of him gets him violently murdered.
Did he know that they were brother and sister?
Yeah, because the whole thing was, he was the one that did know, and it was, he was the one that did know. What's his name? So O'Day Soo didn't, right? He just saw two people. He saw the girl that he met earlier and somebody else. He was telling his friend, and his friend was the one that said,
He'll be back. Come on. Come on. Sorry, guys. Having some connection issues tonight. I just think it's an awful lot to go through to harbor that vengeance for that long and then for another 15 years after he's in prison or in whatever the place he's being held prisoner. I just think just because this guy told her, I mean, it was true. It was a true, it's not really a rumor if it's true, right? I don't know. It's like you made her kill herself. No, I mean you were banging her. So just looking for somewhere to place blame. One of those situations where you got to blame someone. So let's blame the person that's in front of me. Sorry.
I knew that was coming. I'm going to call Bell. This is all messed up.
You seem better now.
That's good. I hope it lasts.
But no, I was just saying, I'm doing it's an awful stretch to go through all that trouble, all that planning for, I mean, we'll say what, probably 15 years before he was in prison, right? So, I mean, to do all that planning and have that much rage and vengeance towards this guy, and all he really did was tell the truth. I mean, it wasn't really a rumor. It really happened. He saw it,
And it wasn't even done with malicious intent because in witnessing it, he
Right.
didn't know they were siblings. He just knew he saw the girl, do stuff with somebody. So he told the guy, and the other guy was like, made the connection that it was the brother. So it's not even like he was doing it maliciously. Like I caught, I caught a brother and sister doing this, and I want everybody to know. So yeah, it is interesting from that perspective. But like you said, he has to blame somebody. At the end, it still did, whether he meant, I guess intent didn't really matter to him, because at the end of the day, he felt like that was what kicked off the series of events that led to her killing herself, which was, the worst possible thing that could happen to him, was to lose her.
Mm-hmm.
They show that he sort of trains himself, and then he, in the narration, when he first fights the first few thugs or whatever that he takes the cigarette from, he's just like, can like practicing on your own from stuff you saw on TV, like it work in the real world? He's like, I guess it can, because he beats those guys up, and then he goes.
Oh no. Sorry, I apologize, guys. Having a rough night with the connection issues. My connection was actually giving me a problem earlier as well, but he'll come back and we can go ahead and wrap up. I've been going for over 2 hours now. Yeah, we're just trying to get an episode in. This was one we both had access to. Felt like a good pick just to get one on the channel there, because it's been a while, and hopefully going forward we will be able to get more episodes up. So look forward to that. You guys have any recommendations, you're always welcome to shoot them to us on the YouTube comments or over on Twitter. The movie discussion, no, it's THEMDPD on Twitter. So feel free to send us a message over there as well. We're always looking for recommendations. Got a couple of series we're going to try to start doing again. And yeah, like we said earlier, like we were going to do the LSC, which I was really excited about. I'm a big fan of that movie, and it just didn't work out. The copy that Cole was able to watch, the subtitles kept screwing up, and it's kind of a important part of that movie that you really need the subtitles. A lot of characters, a lot of things going on. But yeah, if you guys haven't seen the LSC, check that one out. That's another Korean film. It is by the same guy that did The Chaser, which is another. That's primarily an action movie. See if I can figure out this director's name. It's not coming up. But yeah, I was excited about doing that one, and just didn't work out for us. But hopefully one day we will get to do that movie. And he's back.
Okay, I've had to move. Man, this is uncomfortable because I have to. Ah, shit. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do something before next week, or can't continue like this. But well, I shouldn't get here anyway.
Yeah, I was saying that we could probably go ahead and wrap up since we've been going about 2 hours anyway.
I guess so. I mean, it's too bad. There's other things in there that's interesting, like Mr. Han. Mr. Han only has one line in the whole movie, and it's interesting because I was talking about how like he's played up to be pretty tough. He takes all these guys out, and when he gets to the elevator part, they actually skip the scene. He just smiles, and the next thing we have is him getting off the elevator, and they're all knocked out or dead or whatever.
just falling.
But then he turns out to be no match for Mr. Han, who they don't even show, just beating the shit out of him. Except at one point, he seems to have superhuman strength and throws him up against the window. But before that actually happens, when he first cuts through the guys and he gets to Han, it's a really funny anticlimax where Mr. Han just says, "Let's talk things out." And then they talk for a while before they actually fight. And despite how badass he is, he's no match for Han. But because Han is mad about getting stabbed and might kill him, Woo Jin shoots and kills Han himself. But I thought Han was an interesting guy. He doesn't have any dialogue except that one line. And he's a small guy, but he's obviously pretty tough because he's with him at all times. And Woo Jin is completely at ease. And it turns out he's right because he just tosses him around like a rag doll. But then he winds up killing him himself. So there's some things there that play with your expectations. Like Han, who seems so calm, after getting stabbed, is so mad that it's just like, I guess he's just so mad about being stabbed and bleeding that he's going to kill him right there. And he won't listen to Woo Jin. So Woo Jin just walks up and shoots him. I mean, I guess it is, since Woo Jin is planning on killing himself within a few minutes anyway, I guess he doesn't really matter what else he does. So he might as well kill him. I can't even put this where I normally put it because the cord's not long enough. I'm plugged in here. Also in the dark. But yeah, I don't know. This wasn't as focused as I would have liked because we had to jump around and talk about some other things. But I mean, it's obviously a very good movie. It's a very visceral movie. It's made a strong impact on a lot of people. Definitely me, like I said, especially the timing of it, really. It was part of when my eyes were being opened to like a wider world of different sorts of movies. I mean, the movie's still got a really good, reputation and scores with critics and things like that. Roger Ebert liked it a lot, gave it 4 out of 4 stars. Makes quite a few lists of various best ofs and things like that. Yeah, so it's got a reputation, and yet it's funny, since it's part of a trilogy, you would think the other 2 movies, more people would take notice of them, but I still don't think most people are that aware of the other 2 movies. So, you might want to check out our episode on Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and we do plan on eventually closing out the trilogy and doing Lady Vengeance. Plus, I just really need to watch it again. It's been so long since I've seen it. I think it's the darkest of the 3, and they're all pretty dark. I think it's the darkest.
If I remember, I get kind of a Lady Snowblood feel from it.
I'm sure it took
more modern.
I'm sure it must have taken some inspiration there.
Oh, a lot of people did.
Of course, we did Lady Snowblood on here. If anybody's interested in seeing that, we also did that one. A great Japanese classic.
Have you seen the sequel?
Yeah. Actually, I still have it recorded. It's good. It's not as good as the first one. It's certainly worth watching.
I need to watch it before I lose Criterion Channel.
Yeah.
I know it's on
there. I think
Criterion
sells the 2 together. It's been on my Amazon wish list for a long time, but I haven't pulled the trigger. It's funny. I moved out of the room. I was going to show you. Well, I guess I can show you after we're off air. I was going to show you something I got. But anyway, it doesn't matter there. So I guess, we can sum it up. But yeah, this was certainly my gateway into Korean film. And I said Park Chan-wook has had such a cool career with a lot of cool, dark, edgy movies, but also with a cool sort of stylistic twist to them.
Mm-hmm.
He's really good at the psychological thriller angle. He didn't just do the Vengeance trilogy. He did The Handmaiden, which is interesting, like, because it's it's not like full of violence or anything like that, but it definitely gets into some sort of kind of dark, edgy kind of material. Plus, it is very sexually explicit, which it stands out for. But let me see what else is on the list here. I can't believe I'm forgetting.
Yeah, he's very much a.
Oh, of course, his American movie Snowpiercer.
Yeah. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I eventually watched it. It's fine. It's an interesting concept. Oh, Decision to Leave. That's the one that came out last year. That's supposed to be really good.
That's him?
Yeah, that's him.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't realize that was his.
So that's like, Yeah, that's one that I urgently want to watch. Is Decision to Leave. Seems pretty. I mean, I'm a fan of him anyway, but I've heard really good things about it. But yeah, in the last few years, he's been maybe a little bit eclipsed by Bong Joon-ho, of course, who did Parasite. And there were a couple times because we covered him too. We did Mother by Bong Joon-ho. So yeah, I think a few times I probably mixed them up. And I know there's more directors than that. And like I said, we were going to do a completely different one. We were going to do The Yellow Sea by a completely different director. And maybe eventually we'll get to that. I'd hate to abandon it after the work I put into it. But at the time, I was just sick of watching it. Plus, I didn't really have a full understanding of it anyway because of the whole subtitles mess. But
yeah,
that's something in the future, hopefully, we can get around to. So we've done a few Korean films on here because we also did The Good, the Bad, the Weird, which is just a really fun movie. A lot of fun.
Yeah, Mother, I think, was like the second one we did.
It's one of the earliest ones we did.
Second or third, yeah. That was back when they were on my channel.
Yeah, it's going way back there. It's a good movie. I should watch it again. That's probably the last time I watched it. I should probably watch it again.
And The Host, I believe he did that one as well.
That's Bong Joon-ho. We didn't do it, but Bong Joon-ho did it,
Yeah.
We talked a little about it, I think, in the Mother episode. An interesting sort of monster movie, but really focuses on the family dynamic, which seems to be really Bong Joon-ho's strength. He likes to do the family dynamic. But Park Chan-wook, he likes deep, psychological, disturbing stuff.
Yeah, he's very much on like visually disturbing, like disturbing visuals, especially, you know.
Yeah,
like it's gonna get a rise out of you.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie there just mentioned, you know, the tongue thing. Yeah, the tongue thing is awful, and the fact is, they actually do a discretion shot for you, right? They actually do cut away. They don't show the actual cut. So I'm glad. Given the kind of movie it is, I remember one of the reasons I can't stand it too is because you're totally anticipating that you are going to see it. Like you definitely feel like, oh yeah, you're going to see it, but you don't see it, and then you just see him go over to the water and sort of.
Because you know, in sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, he does a lot of like close-ups on the girl after she's drowned.
Yeah,
and it's just awful to see. You know, I think that's probably the most well.
And there's that really weird, darkly comic moment that makes it even worse, right? Where like the mentally challenged guy or whatever with the palsy comes in and sort of like takes the little candy necklace off her. Like it makes it even worse. Like she's like, we're always close up of this dead little girl that drowned, and now this guy is just like pulling away at her body. It's so long and takes forever. So yeah, he's pretty good at disturbing us on different levels. But there's so much of Lady Vengeance I forget, like so much. So yeah, so we definitely won't have as long a gap. We'll get to it sooner because I mean, how long ago was it that we did Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance? It was definitely a few years. So
at least a couple years, yeah.
Yeah, so it won't be a couple years before we track Lady Vengeance down. We'll get to it sooner. But as I said, it's 2023 now, and we hope that we can be more productive this year because certainly we haven't run out of ideas and things we do. There's a series I want to do that I think we're finally going to get around to doing pretty soon. So that'll be cool because we haven't done a series in a long time either. It's a series that focuses on a director. That's the only hint I'll get. It's not a genre time thing. It's the films of a certain director. But hopefully in the next little while we can put that together. Probably not next episode, but pretty soon, I think. Anyway, I have to get my internet and shit sorted out before next week. This is unacceptable. I'm not happy. Not happy about a lot of things. Lately, I'm not happy about Nova Scotia Power. Not happy about Bell, who are overcharging me for my cable right now. And not delivering. So, some things to sort out.
Yeah.
There's always something.
That is true.
So anyway, thanks for anybody that joined us because I know we've been off for maybe the longest we've ever been off, and we didn't announce this one or anything, and we were a bit late tonight. So this one was kind of haphazard coming at you, but we didn't want to do a half-assed episode, although it got messed up on my stupid technical difficulties. But I want to do what I can so that doesn't happen again. Because it is a good movie, and I'm glad we did it. And we probably avoided it for a while because we thought, oh, maybe it's too obvious. But if we're covering the whole trilogy, we might as well. And it's definitely a good movie. And I was glad just to have an excuse to watch it again because it's been quite some time since I watched it. It's an enjoyable movie, despite the fact that it's not a fun movie or anything. But it's still really good watch. Like I said, since we do the full spoilers on here, I hope anybody who watched this has already seen the movie, really. But I don't know. Even if a movie's been spoiled, doesn't mean you can't check it out.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it then.
Sorry, I didn't have anything to add. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.